Okay.
Yep.
Okay, all the meetings to order at 5:31 p.m. Some announcements before we get started. Warrant article request for Springtown meeting cycle must be submitted to the town clerk on or before February 2nd, that's a Monday. There's information on the town website about that process as well as article request forms. West Newbury Food Pantry schedule and wish list is in the packet for tonight. Sage Center Council and Aging newsletter and the for the January-February period is also in the packet. And most of you probably were sent to the your home address. Veterans and Oral History Project interviews are now available on the Veterans Affairs webpage. This was a series of interviews that was done, initiated by the Cable Advisory Committee. And so you can look at each individual's veteran interview on that webpage. There's a land conservation workshop on Wednesday, January 28th at 6 p.m. in the first floor hearing room. That's being put on by Greenbelt and the Open Space Committee. And last and always, there's a call for volunteers. There are current openings right now. Notably, the Conservation Commission is looking for somebody to help out. Remember, you can find this on the homepage at the volunteer tab. First item of regular business is public comment. Anybody here wishing to make a comment on a topic that's not on tonight's agenda?
I do. I'm here.
Okay.
So this has to do with town meeting and making it work better. At the last town meeting, there was, I recall, a comment that it would be nice if the townspeople had comments and critiques or whatever before, and not on Facebook and not at the town meeting, if people could participate earlier. And I want to say that that's really hard for people who are not invested in the details of what's going on in the town. You know, I know that your select board packets have a wealth of information, but it's somewhat segmented and you never know what's a draft and what's not. And then also, when you get to the FinCom booklet, it's sort of late. It's already done. It's written. It's there. So it would be helpful if the process could back up a little bit and have an announcement that's widely available that lets people know this is what we're going to be doing and this is what you need to look at now so that it isn't too late. Because I think what's happening is the townsfolk get this late and they're sort of crunched for time. So number one, think about a preview, if you will, of a near final that people could comment on. And number two, there needs to be a process for that. Obviously, it's not going to work if people comment really late. And should people see other people's comments? I mean, there are a lot of questions about that. But I recognize that this may require sort of a accelerated or backed up time frame before the FinCom booklet is published. But if you want people to comment earlier, I think it's going to be important for them to have the opportunity to do that with, again, number one, some sort of a published, this is what you need to look at thing before the FinCom booklet, and then a process that goes with it that is useful for the town to respond to and then for town meeting. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I think it's worth adding that to a future agenda and try to flesh out how we can keep that. Okay, any other comments?
I don't know if I can do public comment.
Of course.
So the past week, based on a couple of items on the agenda, there's been a lot of comments, I guess, made both in public media, privately, emails, and everything else. And so I just wanted to run through and throw out a few of my thoughts. I've written them down just so that I don't miss them or misspeak. So if it's dry, I apologize. 3 years ago, I decided to run for the select board because I thought that my prior experience in town, I've been on many boards and committees over the past 30 years, and I thought it would be helpful And that's my only objective, is to make West Newbury better. And try and help the residents have a better quality here. And I stated from the beginning not to be disruptive. I'm not looking to stir it up, I'm not looking to create problems. I think something that residents should take into mind and they would heed. Select board members, all three of us, we're volunteers. We get no compensation, no pay. And we put in literally hundreds, and so I've done the math myself, it's well over 1,000 hours a year volunteering for the town. I do probably about 1,400 hours a year. I can't even calculate how many hours Wendy does. It's staggering. And Ross is new and he's putting in a lot of time too, and it's a ton of work. And it's not just this meeting. Sometimes we'll have 3 or 4 meetings a week to go to, whether it's schools or whatever, any of the subcommittees we're involved with in town. It's a lot of work. We have to deal with literally hundreds of different issues, projects, resident complaints. And it's a staggering amount of time and effort and more subject matter than anybody would ever think you would have to learn and encompass at any one time. All the way from fiscal to legal to sewage to, it's just amazing the amount of things that we have to deal with, and it's overwhelming. And most of the people who are making these comments are seeing just a very small slice of the issues that we're trying to juggle and balance. And I appreciate and understand the passion, because each of those issues are important. But this board, from everything I can tell, has no hidden agenda. And what we're trying to do is just make West Newbury the best community that we can based on the information we have. So I find it very, very unfortunate that a number of people, when they disagree with our decisions, take to social media, or in person, or email, to make attacks on us. We've had numerous emails, some have been respectful and appreciative, and then there have been others that I can't believe people would put together and send out. And this is all simply for the three of us. We're putting in a lot of effort and trying to do the right thing. I'm disappointed with the attacks and the amount of misinformation that is deliberately put out as well. And we don't respond on social media because the select board conducts its business in these open public meetings. And not on social media. That would be foolish and dangerous as well. We try and deal with facts and the best information that we have available to balance the needs and the wants of all the residents of West Newbury as a whole. And I think that's critical, because we're not going to hit every individual resident's high priority and complete that. We're trying to balance and juggle so many needs. And it's not just the needs of the residents we're balancing, we're trying to balance the needs of the employees and the volunteers of the town as well. And I find it very, very frustrating and disappointing to work so hard to do the right thing, and then have those who disagree make these personal attacks. In spite of all this, I know I will, and I'm sure Wendy and Ross will continue to listen to the residents, to the employees, to our expert consultants to do the best job that we can for the town. And I'd like to encourage more civil discussion and more respectful approach when we disagree. I've got.
Any other public comments? Okay. Move on to item B, town manager updates.
Thank you. The first item on the update is the website conversion. I know the board knows this and many people do, but I'll just say it as often as I can. The town is migrating to a new webpage. This was not the timing we would have chosen. This was something that was imposed upon us by the vendor for all of their websites. With that said, we do think it's going to be, we know it's going to be qualitatively better. And we think people are going to be very pleased with it. We're now at the point where we are, basically the conversion date is at our choosing. Amanda and Rebecca and Max and others, but really that's the core team on the website have been putting in a tremendous amount of work converting everything over. Ever since the cutoff date, which was mid-December, with the vendor, they moved everything over after that date. But going forward, literally every post we're making on our website, we're gonna need to remake on a new page, so that's been done in parallel. But anytime there's like substantive changes to pages or changes to the structure of a page, that's all gotta be duplicated. So I'll say again, this was not the timing we would have chosen. This is, anyone who's ever been through a website conversion knows it's a tremendous amount of work, huge amount of detail work, and a lot of things that you just can't afford to have slip through the cracks, especially when we're dealing with public documents and posted agendas and so forth. So I think the website looks great. I think there's a lot of features that people are really gonna like. We are in a position where, you know, we could convert over as early as the next week. The issue is, and part of why I think it's good, there's a lot of people from the community watching this meeting. It's one of these, you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I mean, if we wait until the new site is 100% everything we ever wanted, you know, it just, the timeline goes on. Whereas if we convert over sooner to where we think it's very good, people will find glitches. And so people need to be understanding if they, so for instance, you know, Civic Plus didn't migrate over all of the years of minutes and agendas. They only did like 1 year. So backfilling hundreds and hundreds of posting, it takes time, you know, we have a finite amount of staff time. So I just would, you know, I think the path that we're on is to do a conversion, you know, to make the new site live, probably in the next week and a half. You know, I do want to personally spend some time going through and just going through some of the particular pages that I oversee to make sure that, you know, I'm comfortable with everything as it is. But once it's converted, it's not like it can never change. You know, we're going to continue to improve the site going forward. Yeah, so I want to share that. I did pull up, and I don't know if it's a great use of time tonight. We obviously got a lot on the agenda, but I did pull up the new page. Everything you see is, I don't know what, what. No, I don't know. So, you know, a lot of the content is similar to what people see today. We've got the Facebook page embedded with meetings. We have the public meetings will be on one tab as opposed to public events. So I think that's going to be a nice feature. We've got a lot of shortcut links. A lot of the page content is going to be the same, but we changed, and we're continuing to change some of the shortcuts will be. So I don't know why I'm seeing this formatting issue where the text is like overlapping. You know, there's still.
Screen is small when you're looking at it on this house.
Yeah, well, but it's a normal, yeah, well, anyhow, so.
Yeah, I like the look of it.
Yeah, you know, personally, I don't love the blue as a secondary color. I'd like to change that. I do like the green. And I like the kind of beige, the color palette, but I'm not a big fan of this shade of blue. I don't think it really.
I think it's the logo that they're trying to match.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're trying to match the town seal. So, you know, I understand. And that was why they did it. But I think aesthetically, it's not like perfect. This image is, you know, I think it's a nice image. This is it's over Pipe State. It's actually a double rainbow, but we had to crop the image to meet the dimensions, so you can't see the double rainbow, but it's quite a beautiful photo. We have a lot of great photos before this is kind of fully live. Like right now, you see a lot of these are the same kind of stock image of Rouse Spring Farm. You know, we're going to customize all of that. So we're still working on it. A lot of the focus has been on the content more than the aesthetics. But I think it's going to be a very nice site. I just do need people to understand once we convert over, there are going to be some things that you're used to seeing on the old page that it's going to take up a while to backfill. So that information is all still available on request, and it is not our intent in any way to reduce the amount of information available on the site. It's just, we've got to do this conversion. The timeline was imposed upon us, and we've been working very hard at it really since this summer. But especially these last 6 weeks, it's been a real push, as the deadline's gotten closer for the conversion, so.
Can you, I assume you'll put a banner on there that says website under construction or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah. So, but obviously with everything going on and, you know, I know this is the era of conspiracy theories, and so if someone says, hey, they reduced the number of minutes that are posted, that there is no intent to do it. It's purely a bandwidth issue. It's just something we do the best we can every day with the staff that we have, and so. So before we go live, I think what we could do is send around, once it's maybe like midweek next week or toward the end of next week, we could send it to you guys and you can kick the tires, and if you find it that's hindering, extra set of eyes is always good, but at some point we will flip the switch. That will become the new site. It is a new URL, which is not ideal, because that means every
old.
link is gonna be a broken link. To the
Like all
old
the
site.
plans and
Uh,
housing production plan and,
well, no, it'll be live within the site. But,
but the links within the plan, will they have to be updated?
well, they won't work,
Okay.
so whether they're gonna be updated or not is a different thing, but I think with the other kind of parallel reforms that are coming our way with the ADA requirements that are taking effect next April, where everything's gonna need to be fully accessible online. We're no longer gonna be able to do embedded links. It's gonna have to be the full written out URL. That is, I think, very unfortunate. As you know, I make a lot of use of the embedded links. I think it's an elegant way to share information, but under the new federal requirements that the Department of Justice approved in 2024, that is going to be a thing of the past. So that's a bigger conversation. So. We're making steps with this new site to improve accessibility under ADA, but it is still, we're a long way away from meeting those requirements. Next item, the Whittier Tech, we had the regional agreement amendment committee last week. I think the meeting went very well. Chris was there. We had, we always have very good turnout at those. I put the agenda in the packet, and if there's any specific questions you have, there was backup on each of these items. We went through a lot of nuts and bolts of how the committee is gonna function, because this is the first time it is formally a public body. It's actually a subcommittee of the Whittier School Committee. So even though it's been largely operating in accordance with open meeting law, with postings and so forth, it's now officially a public body. So we wanted to establish all of the protocols for posting, for minutes, for votes. The votes are taken by community, with each community having a primary and an alternate. So that's where this agenda has a lot more kind of operational things that with the newly constituted committee leadership wanted to get that kind of all out there up front, so that we can focus on the meat of the work, which is really the agreement itself and what the terms are and what's going to be agreeable. I know this board's aware, but in order to meet the requirements of the MSBA, there need to be amendments to the Whittier Tech Regional Agreement approved by June 30th of 2027. That would require a unanimous vote of 8 town meetings and 3 city councils throughout the region. As you know, that is an extremely tall order, and to meet town meetings for next April, that means the amendments have to be substantially agreed by the leadership of those 11 communities roughly in about 12 months. So it's a very intensive process. One of the key aspects of this agreement or this agenda that might not have jumped out of the page at you, but I think is very important, is the creation of a interactive cost estimating workbook. That's something I'm working on with the school business manager and with Tracy Blaze in Newbury, to look at how are the capital costs and operating costs, for that matter, allocated in different regional school districts, particularly VOTEC, but not exclusively. And if we apply those same methods to the Whittier project, how would that have affected the cost distribution relative to what was voted down by voters in early 2024? So for instance, if it was based on that year's enrollment or some of the different agreements that we've gathered, we have, I think, 9 different agreements that we're looking at as samples. There's a lot of different methods that they use, and we're building a model so that we can see, like, in actual dollars, how that would have translated with the prior project. And we'll also be able to key in different assumptions on, for instance, percentage match for MSBA, or if there's any other non-local funding, as we're hoping to get significant allocation from the governor's office on the ideally from the millionaire's tax, to see what level of contribution they might make that would really make a meaningful impact on the local costs. So.
So does excuse me, does
yeah.
each town or city get one vote, or does each the primary and the secondary also?
No, each gets 1 vote. So it's a 15-member committee with each of the, so for instance, where Chris and I are both on there, I'm the primary, Chris is the alternate. If I'm absent, Chris would vote on behalf of West Newbury.
Okay.
So, and of the 15 members, it's 11 voting members, that's the 11 cities and towns, and then 4 non-voting members who are members of the Whittier Tech School Committee. As a follow-up to this meeting, I did participate in a meeting with on Monday with the chairs and vice chairs of the Regional Agreement Committee, the School Committee, and the School Building Committee. So we had, I think, a very productive meeting on Monday morning, really just to make sure that the 3 committees are all communicating and sharing information. And really, one of the main takeaways is that we all stay in our lane. So for instance, some of the discussion that we had at the meeting last week about the scope of the feasibility study for the new project is, you know, while we can wave a flag on that, that's really more of a school building committee issue at this point. So.
Okay.
A couple of construction updates, Mill Street Bridge, we are working to get estimate on the change order. Our engineer has received a proposal and is vetting that. They're gonna have some recommended changes to that, so we have a meeting set up next week with myself, Butch, Caitlin, and Jenny, as well as with John, Eric, and the financial team in Newburyport to go through what the change order is, what they're recommending, and then we would negotiate that with the vendor. In terms of the actual progress, you know, we continue to be on track with the expectation that the project will be complete by around May. So that's exciting, but the financial management, you know, continues to be pretty much daily focus. Pipes Dave, I put a memo in the packet. We did have a sidewalk last Friday. It's substantially complete. There's a couple of items still be back in the spring for the line striping, slope stabilization, redoing the loam and seed. We also are separately working with our vendor on invasive species to tackle the knotweed on the north side of Main Street there. And we were able to make a change with one of our RFBs on the south side with the placement of one of the boxes was not going to work well for the equestrians. So that was brought to our attention. We were able to get that change made. And we have also, in response to Ross, to your suggestion, I was in touch with TDC on what would be involved with smoothing out the edge of that granite curb at the bottom of the new sidewalk. And they agreed that would be a good change. So they're going to work with Commonwealth to basically initiate a change order. I don't think it's going to be a significant dollar thing that'll fit within the budget, but we should be able to get that resolved.
Can you scroll up to the photo just for?
Yeah. So yeah, that's this. Ross had raised a concern, and he was not the only one about just the sharp edge on this curve.
As a safety concern.
Yeah, so, you know, you'll see elsewhere, there's like a tapered granite, so that's something that we can get
And
done.
the invasives were where the earth is disturbed or on that side?
Yeah, they were on this side and they predated the project.
Yeah.
So those were not a result of the project, but with so many eyes on this, it became, it was, you know, brought to our attention. So we're working with our invasives contractor to get a treatment plan that he estimates would probably take 3 treatments a year for a couple of years to really get rid of it. Next item, pickleball. If you've been out there, you see the base course paving is done, and last week they started setting the granite for the seating wall. And this was very early in the work. They've been at it for about 2 weeks, so it's a lot further along now than these photos. But that's very exciting. And you're aware this is reclaimed granite from the Middle Street Bridge, so I think that's a nice creative use of that.
Will we be able to have some kind of plaque noting that?
We are working on a plaque, yeah. Let's see, next item, the Lower Artichoke Dam. We had a meeting last Wednesday with we had a number of key staff on the town side with water superintendent, member of the Water Commission, conservation agent, Concom chair, health agent, and we had a number of Newbury Port staff and officials. I knew it was going to be the city engineer and their kind of core staff and consultant, but they also had members of the Water and Sewer Commission and Connie Preston, whose term recently ended on the city council, but was the chair of their ad hoc committee on water. She was there. It was probably 20 people there. Very positive meeting. I recapped it with the staff on Wednesday morning at our huddle. Everyone agreed it was a very helpful meeting, very substantive, and we all agree with the intent of what they're doing, why it is so important and urgent. So there's obviously significant permitting impacts with that. So I think the next step on that is Concom is going to be hosting the city and their consultant to come in and talk about a couple of alternative approaches. We think we know what's going to be favored. We think it's going to be the one that goes around the perimeter, not that goes across. But it'll be good for Concom to have an opportunity to give some input on that before it's formally filed. So that'll be the next step there. And then some other updates. I included the agenda from yesterday's huddle. As always, we cover a lot of issues on that. So if there's anything specific you want me to touch on, I can, but otherwise I just include that in there so you see kind of what we're working on. And then also I put in the memo from Caitlin and some of the procurement. As you know, that's a very active workload. She manages quite a lot of work out of that office. So
Ask about the roof on the public safety, because we
Yeah.
did get another email with that information.
Sure.
We're gonna be discussing that tonight or next week?
I'd like that on next week.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think that's important, move it on.
definitely. Yeah. And we'll also be talking, I think, next week about the solid waste procurement, where we are with that.
All right.
Yes, that's what I've got.
The next item is action items. Before we start those, I just wanted to provide some clarity on public comment. So there's a distinction between the different types of meeting and whether public comment is allowed. A public hearing is required, by statute. And in that case, if there's a legal ad, it's in the newspaper, and the public has a right to make their opinion known. So that's one kind. Typically, the select board doesn't have that kind of meeting. It's usually the planning board and conservation commission. A public meeting is designed to share information with the public, answer questions, kind of get public input. For example, on the MBTA communities program, we had a couple public meetings where it was all about communicating with the public. We also did that for the Page School assessment. So that's one type of meeting. And then there are also meetings that are open to the public, which is what the select board meeting is. And essentially, this is our business meeting. So there may be things that we want input from the public on, but there's not an expectation that the public has a right to raise issues or to comment. It's at the discretion of the chair, whether the chair welcomes that or allows that even. So I know there's been some questions about that in the community. I just wanted to kind of clarify that so people understand. So in terms of action items, the first is a request to approve an order of taking to establish Major Boyd Drive as a public land.
All right, and as you know, this was authorized by town meeting, and this was approved to accept Major Boyd Drive as a public way. This is really just of effectuating that taking. So what you have in front of you is an order of taking that was prepared by town council. And part of what contributed to the time it took to get this before the board for a vote is there were easements that are shown on the approved subdivision plan that are integral to the stormwater system for the subdivision. And because those easements were, because the land had already been sold, transferred to the various property owners prior to the acceptance of the road as public, those easements are also part of what the town is accepting, rights to access that stormwater infrastructure. And so each of the property owners in that neighborhood had to sign a waiver authorizing the town to accept the waivers, or to accept the easements. So we have, as of yesterday morning, Mike Crowe brought in all 8 signed waivers. We did provide those to town council. She confirmed those do not need to be recorded. Those are something we keep in our records as part of the street acceptance file. So at this point, it's a complete package in front of you. So if you're comfortable, the recommended action would be to approve the order of taking.
Make a motion to approve the order of taking for Major Boyd Drive as presented.
Second.
Right, any further discussion?
Yeah, just a question, is this required on all subdivisions or just because the drainage easements were required? I don't recall it previously on the roadway footprint itself.
Right, it's because the easements were on the, and just as an aside, when I used to be the town planner in Marshfield, we always required.
The next action item is River Road.
We always required the drainage infrastructure to be on separate lots. So when the town was accepting the road, they would actually own the land. I do think as a matter of planning practice, that was a good thing. That's not something that's been done here in West Newbury. So a lot of the drainage is within easements on private property. And like I said, where the land had already been sold, the owners had the consent to granting the town those easements.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who was the second on that?
Ross.
Dave, thanks.
The second item under action items is the River Road Resiliency Planning Project. So the topic for tonight is withdrawing from the MVP grant. There've been several meetings discussing this between the Climate Change Resiliency Committee, the CCRC, and the Select Board. I think we know fully well where that committee stands in terms of how they view this. I'm sure they also know where we stand. I don't see a lot of value in continuing that conversation. At the last meeting, we were ready to vote, but as Liz, the chair, I think Liz came in, pointed out, it was on the agenda as a discussion item, not an action item. So we agreed to wait until this week to vote on it. However, I see a lot of people here that haven't been involved in those conversations before. So what I would like to do is kind of provide just a really high-level summary of where we're at with this. I have a list of about 10 questions or concerns that have been raised to the select board through the email address or directly. I'd like to respond to those. And then if there are any remaining questions from people here, I will take those and we can try to answer them. I don't want to have an extended comment period on this, however, but I do want to make sure that residents' questions are answered because this is a big deal. I feel like this is probably the most difficult vote that I've had to take as a member of the select board. So I want to make sure the public understands, what's at stake here.
Could you speak a slight bit louder, please?
Would it help if you come in the front? Because I'm talking this way and.
All this,
Okay. I will try. It's not my normal, so to kind of summarize where we're at, the issue, I think all of us agree, select board, climate change committee, residents of River Road, that climate change is happening in West Newbury. We are going to be impacted and River Road is particularly vulnerable. I think we also agree that we have to start planning for how we're going to address this. The challenge is that this particular grant, at this particular time, we don't have the staff capacity to manage it. I mean, that's the crux of the issue. We've gone through several iterations of looking at the scope of the grant to see if we could reduce it. We're just at a point where we, as Chris mentioned, we have a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of information that the public is not aware of, and we feel like this is what needs to be done and is in the best interest of the town. So that being said, I do want to address people's questions. The first is just a really basic question, what is the project that we're talking about? Some people are under the impression that this is gonna fix River Road. This is an alternatives analysis. It's a study to look at what possible alternatives could fix or address or prepare for climate change. Following that will take, this grant was for 2 years. After that, there would need to be an engineering and design phase. And then following that, there would need to be actual construction. So we're looking at least 10 years out before we actually did anything, maybe longer. I just want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. Really basic question, why are we considering withdrawing from the grant? I think I addressed that. It's a staffing issue. We have been able to reduce the scope of the grant. The state agreed to that, and we were all set to go, even though the grant was late in being awarded. And then unfortunately, the project manager for the town who would be managing the project resigned for family reasons. So we're left with nobody in town with the capability of managing this grant other than Angus, the town manager. Clearly, he has many other things on his plate, and the select board does not feel that we can sacrifice him to work on this grant, and sacrifice the other issues. Why can't you reduce the size of the project so there's less burden on staff? I think I addressed that. We did, initially the scope was looking at climate change along the entire River Road. So, after one of our discussions, the select board decided to hire a consultant to help us look at the scope and see if there was a way to reduce it, to try to make it a smaller project that we could manage in-house. And they suggested that we look at the 3 areas along the road that were identified in a prior study as the highest risk for flooding. So we went through that exercise, changed the scope, sent it back to the state, and they approved that. So that was an effort, and then, shortly after that is when our project manager resigned. Did you ask for an extension of the grant? We did. After the project manager resigned, Angus and I met with the administrator of the grant program, explained the staffing situation, and said, is there any way we could just get 6 months, just start the grant at the beginning of FY27 instead of FY26. And unfortunately, the way it's structured, that's not an option. The only thing she said we could do is revise the scope and spend whatever money we could in this year, and then just be limited to what was already awarded for next year. So it would have been a lot of work with no guarantee that they would accept it. And we would be in probably March before we start the work, and then have 3 months to do an entire year's worth of work for year 1. So the effort was made, but that did not really pan out. Another question is, how much money are we giving up? There's kind of 2 parts to their question. One is the money, and then the other is this concept of giving up. I don't know if you want to speak, Chris, to grant, what that means. Is it free money or not?
Because of my previous beefing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the grant's 400,000 plus, I guess. But as I keep saying, I guess, there's no such thing as free money. Because the town project manager had indicated it would take the majority of her time over 2 years. And that was a 32-hour position, I believe. So that's tens of thousands of dollars there, plus there would have been Concom involved, Board of Health, many other boards and committee and staff involved. So even though the grant is free money, it's not free money. There's a lot of strings attached, and a lot of other projects have been fall by the wayside on that. Maybe I throw it out now. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that we're not turning a blind eye to River Road. About a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, the comprehensive plan committee was getting ready to do a full comprehensive plan for the town, asked if the select board had any input on what we should request. And I asked to have one thing, and that was to have a specific topic for climate resiliency to be addressed within the comprehensive plan, because I think it's that important. We also have the opportunity to come back to town meeting either in the fall or the spring and to self-fund this and to do the work that the town specifically needs done, because when you take a grant, you have to comply with a number of components that you would otherwise probably not do to comply with what the state wants done. So I don't think this means that this is dead. I think the grant should be dead, but I think the project can move forward in a different fashion, so.
Maybe with a 6-month lead time or something, so we can clean up some of the.
Right, yes, and get the appropriate staff in the right places.
So in terms of specific numbers, the grant was for $321,000 for this fiscal year and $106,000 for the following fiscal year. Let's see, won't withdrawing from the grant hurt our future chances with state grants? I know this was a concern that was discussed, and I did ask the grant administrator that question. And she said, no, you know, this is clear, a loss of a key staff person is clearly something that we could not anticipate. And she said that would not work against us. She said that if you do vote to withdraw from the grant, she recommended writing a letter explaining why, and then we put it in our file. The feeling is that rather than moving forward with state money on a grant that you don't think that you can complete on schedule and on budget is worse than withdrawing before you start, you know, hiring consultants and spending the state money.
Within her letter too, she also said she felt that it was a rather ambitious project
She
for
did
such a
say
small
that,
town to
yeah.
take on.
Another question is, why can't you just hire a consultant to manage the project? That was actually our intent. The project itself has 4 consultants. The scope has 4 consultants, and given the loss of our project manager, we were contemplating hiring a consultant to manage the consultants. Somebody still has to manage that one consultant, right? And that would be Angus, and we'd have to write a statement for that. It's a lot to try to do in the short amount of time that we have left. What will happen if River Road washes out? We'll deal with it, you know, anytime there's an infrastructure situation in town, we have the crew and the equipment and the staff to deal with that. How will the town address climate change impacts on River Road without the grant? I think Chris has addressed that already. And then finally, what happens to the money that town meeting approved to support this project? So I think 2 years ago in the fall, the town voted to contribute $60,000 towards there was a local match required at that time. So that hasn't been spent. That will just turn back to free cash. So we're not losing that money. It just goes back to free cash. And then if we bring forward another warrant article, you know, the money will still be there. So that's my effort to answer all the questions that have been raised. If there are questions that you have that we have not answered, I'm happy to try to address those, but I do want to not go down the path of, you know, we should still be doing this, because it's pretty clear the select board feels like we can't do this.
Do you want me to say anything about the DER, transitional crossing?
Sure.
Okay, so, people may recall, last fiscal year, the town had applied, I think about 2 years ago, for, DER, Mass Division of Ecological Restoration had issued a request for interest, something like that, for, towns with transitional culverts, which is those that are tidally influenced, to be, part of work that the state would do to assess and evaluate. So there was work done last fiscal year. It was, I think, a moderate help. It didn't go very far in terms of design. But it, you know, it was good. We were one of 2 communities in the Commonwealth selected, and so it was a high profile thing. We were contacted in mid-fall by the administrator at that, Georgina Kerr, and she said the state at that time was going through an RFP to engage a consultant to do additional design work following on the work they had done last year. There's a big distinction between this and the MVP grant because unlike the MVP, this is an instance where the state is doing the procurement, they're engaging the consultant, they're managing the project. The town, obviously, if we participate in this, would be part of meetings and we would be, involved, but we wouldn't be like running it. So it's a big difference in terms of time impact. So I did follow up with Georgianne to see if that was still in the offing, and I did get confirmation just this week that they have recently signed a contract with Ty and Bond. So Ty and Bond is now under contract with Mass DER to do the follow-on work for this. And Georgianne was delighted she said they'd love for our culvert. It's the River Road one down by the farm field there on the western side of the study area. They'd be delighted for that to be part of the work that Ty and Bond would look at. So we do have an initial meeting set up just next week. She just sent me a meeting invite, like I said, right before the meeting, so I didn't check, but she sent me a meeting invite. I assume it's probably for next week or the next 2 weeks. So that's something myself, which Dan Callan, our conservation agent, Paul. Part of that, we look at the scope of what Ty and Bond has been engaged to do and what of that scope is going to be most helpful here. But the idea is to advance the conceptual planning for that part of the study area at no cost to the town and with investment of some staff time.
Wonderful. Good. So, and are there any questions?
One,
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is Jermaine or not, but I'll ask it.
Yeah.
I assume with climate change, whatever impact it has, will have the same kind of impact across the river. Do you know what they're doing?
I think they abandoned the road in Merrimack, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, they did abandon a road because of erosion of the shore. So I don't know if they have a committee that's working on it like we do, but I think that's where Gmail does. Callahan is the chair of our climate change resiliency committee. Gmail Merrimack has it.
There is, I think everyone knows that there is a portion of Merrimack, along Merrimack, that was abandoned
Yeah.
years and years ago.
What does that mean? Abandoned?
The road is, you can't cross it. Part of the shoulder is now falling into the river, so, yeah. But I mean, maybe it's worth checking if they have a group that's working on that as well. Oh, Nancy's.
I don't believe they have a climate change group. Although, just in general, the state is really encouraging, and the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission is encouraging regional kind of collaboration on these issues. Looking at these things, and our committee is always interested in sharing any information that we would develop with the other towns, including on solutions. Wendy, I'm wondering if I could exercise my option that you offered.
Yeah, I
To
would
make
think
some comments, and I promise these are forward-looking comments.
that's great. I just wanted to give people a chance to ask questions, and I plan to ask you.
And we do have one, so far one from the chat.
Okay, I think somebody else.
I'd
here
like
is-
to also, please.
Yeah. Was there somebody else in the audience here that had a question? No, okay, was it John then?
Two, we have Dan and Patricia raised their hand. And then
Dan and Patricia were first.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought those guys were first, but mine's quick. First of all, I just want to say I really appreciate all of you guys volunteer time I've volunteered on committees and stuff before. I know it's a ton of time and it's kind of thankless, so appreciate you guys, the work you put in. Secondly, just on that last point about River Road on the Merrimack side, it is abandoned, but there's no houses on that stretch to my knowledge anyway, so it's just like a
Right.
section. So,
Right.
and you have to go around on Skunk Road or whatever. But anyway, I just, in terms of that town meeting, I think it was fall 2024. And, so it was like the $60,000, but the town had to spend, but, is there, like, was there a vote to accept the grant money? Because if there was a town vote to accept the grant money, would it not have to be a town vote to like reject the grant money?
Yes, so the answer is there was not a vote to accept the grant money. At that time, the grant hadn't even been applied for. The application went in April of this year, and then we were notified in July, I guess, or sometime this summer,
I think it was a little later,
was it?
August.
So, the select board has to vote to accept a grant. We have Angus sign as our, representative, so it's not a town meeting vote. I mean, if it was, I suppose you're right, you have to go back, but that wasn't the case here.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right. Dan and Patricia, or Patricia,
Yep, hi, it's Patricia, and I would like you to clarify for me because I had heard that the budget line item that we had for project manager, instead of being applied to a job search for another project manager, was going to be used for some kind of human resources person. And I'm curious about that decision, since not only did we have the grant that could have been managed by a new project manager, but we have other projects that are on the work plan and keep getting moved out because we don't have enough project manager bandwidth. So I wonder if you could sort of expand on that reasoning.
sure. Yeah, so we haven't voted on it yet, that's on the agenda for tonight. Yeah, it is true, there's a line item budget for the project manager. After the person resigned and we started looking at the needs in town, the select board felt that a human resources manager was a higher need. I mean, we have a lot of personnel related tasks that are being split between 4 positions right now, that's not really their job description. And so we felt that that was a more urgent need. Whether or not we hire a project manager in the future is to be determined. So, yeah, I mean, that person was primarily going to work on the grant. It's not like they would work on any project in town. So it's still a possibility for the future, but at this point, we believe the HR manager is more critical.
But just as follow-up, based on John's comment, if the town approved a line item that was for a project manager position, can the selectmen just reallocate that to a different staff member?
I think we approved the budget. Do we approve specific position things?
Yeah, so under the Town Manager Act, it sets out a process whereby the select board approves a town org chart and staffing structure. So that's typically done both in the budgeting process in the run up to the town meeting approval of town budget, and then in typically in June of each fiscal year, the board approves a salary wage schedule with every position in the organization, what the budgeted hours are, what the rate is, any other compensation stipends or that kind of thing. So all of that goes through the select board. So the mechanism, if the board is to approve a change to go forward with a different position instead of the budgeted position, is and there's a memo I've got tonight's packet. You know, what I say in there is that because it was not carried in the current year budget, that the mechanism to actually execute this direction, if that is the direction the board sets, is to amend the town org chart and direct my office to fill HR position in favor of the program project manager position. So it's really the difference, Patricia, between kind of the legislative function, which is town meeting, and the executive function, which is the select board.
Thanks, Angus.
Paulina?
Thanks. I second John's comment about the volunteer hours and recognize that you guys are putting in so much personal time, and it's frustrating that sometimes the feedback and reaction that you get is not appropriate. But my question is, if the time for this project is not now, then when? Is there a way for the select board to figure out when the time is right so that the committee can stay engaged? I'm concerned that people who are on that committee and other committees like it, they work hard to make these opportunities happen, and then things get delayed or maybe never happen again. So is there a way to keep the board or the committee engaged by committing to a schedule or figuring out a time when you can commit to a schedule? Because like was mentioned, this is the type of project that everybody could just keep pushing further down the road. And if we never get to addressing this issue, it's not going to get any better. So I would love to hear a realistic timeline that either is going to get committed to, or that a plan to make that timeline.
Sure. I mean, we haven't discussed this as a board yet, but my solution would be in 6 months at the beginning of the next fiscal year for the select board and the climate change committee to have a public meeting and discuss the results of the prior study that was done to assess the risks and come up with a plan at that point. That would put us in line for, a decision maybe at fall town meeting or certainly the following spring. So this is not something that's going to go on the back burner for like 5 years. We just need really 6 months of breathing room right now to try to get a handle on all the current projects. And we think it's really important to start off together with the climate change committee and try to engage a lot more people besides, only River Road people. Because it is a town-wide issue that we want to address. So that's my opinion. I don't know if select board members want to give what
I alluded to that earlier too. I said I thought we could go forward with a number at the fall town meeting. I fully expect we will.
Okay. Does that give you any comfort or?
I defer to the committee, but I like the sound that you don't want to defer this forever. It sounds like an important priority for you, which is important.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, anybody else? Sure.
The $60,000 you said we're gonna be put back into free cash, can that be held aside as a kitty for future expenses? As this activity, as you stated, isn't ended, the nature of it has changed. And in fact, if we were wise, we would start to accumulate a larger amount, but the expenses are gonna be considerable.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong, Angus, but that was an article, a warrant article specifically as a match for that grant. So I don't believe we could just hold that aside. Is that right?
That's actually exactly what I'm pulling up now to see exactly what the motion said, because that's what governs, really the answer to that question. So it's a special fall town meeting, and you have to remember what, it was search for. So this was, for the purpose of funding a 10% match for the FY25 grant rounds, with the sunset date of fiscal 27. So the money wouldn't sunset till the end of next year, but if the board does make the decision to not go forward with the grant, I think kind of be splitting hairs as a FY25, like the spirit of it.
But it would
I
be a
think
match for
the right thing to do would be if that's the intent of town meeting, to probably appropriate separate money that's not so constrained, because the town accountant will look at this and say, well, it was really for this grant round, and that's, by the way, her job,
Right.
To do those things, so.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah. Good.
But
Anybody?
when there is a question about eligible use of money, like the motion from town meeting is what me and the town accountant, that's what we rely on. That's what guides what we can and can't do.
Anybody here?
John Dutch.
Yeah, I
guys.
see it. Just wanna make sure
Okay.
everybody-
All
Okay,
right.
John?
Yeah, I'd like to know a little more detail on why an HR manager is so critical now. I heard a little bit of it at a select board meeting in early December, but I assume the 4 people who are doing it now are department heads, and I'd just like to hear a little bit more about the rationale why we're hiring a HR manager.
Yeah, that's on the agenda as a later item, John, so I would like to just wait and discuss it then. Will you be still online for that?
Okay, I mean, the Celtics are on, but that's okay.
Priorities, John, come on.
All right, so thank you all for your questions. I appreciate your, I hope that your answer, and I also should say, anytime there are questions on anything, or you have a comment or an opinion, always feel free to email the select board. I monitor that account daily and I respond to everybody or redirect questions if I can't answer them. So that is one place that you have free reign to provide any comments or questions. I'll let Liz is the chair of the Climate Change Resiliency Committee and I have statement.
Thanks, Lenny. I just wanted to make some brief comments, and it sounds like you're moving along the same lines here. I think what I wanted to say is similar to what Paulina raised, is what are we gonna do next? And I wanna look forward with all of this. First, as Wendy said, I'm the chair of the Climate Change Resiliency Committee, or CCRC, and over the past year, the CCRC worked with the town to pursue the MVP grant to fund an analysis of both the erosion and the flooding along River Road. And we've been consistent and showed up at many of these meetings to advocate for applying for, accepting, and then implementing the grant. The reason I want to speak briefly is not to relitigate the decision before the select board. At this point, without a contractor in place to proceed with the grant, moving the project forward would require a concerted effort. And as has been described, the board has focused the town's strained resources on other priorities. I would like to look ahead and urge the select board to commit to developing a actionable, multi-year work plan with a schedule and a budget for River Road that addresses both short-term measures and long-term options. The scope of the MVP grant that's been developed as part of this process, that proposal provides a useful roadmap for such a plan. And the significant work that's already gone into that to develop that scope should be captured and built upon. And we don't want to be here 5 years from now talking about something that likely not to happen for 10 years. If we don't seize this opportunity to move forward now, we're going to be in the same position years from now, looking back at this missed opportunity. So we've already done a lot of work on this and we should seize that work and use it. The tasks that were included in that grant scope, for example, conducting a geotechnical assessment of the existing road conditions, would inform both emergency repairs and long-term alternatives analysis. I also urge the town to position itself to pursue MVP funding again. MVP funding has gotten a bad rap here, and I know it's challenging, but it's also the best available option for a small town of our size, to take on such complex and costly projects. And to do it quickly, relatively quickly, as one project rather than iteratively over time and losing the thread of bringing it to completion. It also gives us the opportunity to work with regulators and position ourselves to be favorably looked upon for future construction grants. River Road has been identified as a high-risk area in the town's hazard mitigation plan for over 20 years. Its vulnerability, as you know, just doesn't affect the residents and the neighboring streets, but the town's fiscal condition as well. Continued forward progress helps protect the town from costly, reactive, very expensive decisions made under emergency conditions. And I know we all share an interest in avoiding that outcome. Just want to close by saying the CCRC committee is committed to this project and available to assist the town in advancing both short-term and long-term resiliency planning for River Road. Yes.
All right, any other comments by the board or? Okay, Chris, you ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay,
Not really, but I will. I make a motion to town of West Newbury, respectfully withdraw from the MVP grant. Second.
Any further discussion? I guess I would just like to say to Liz and the Climate Change Resiliency Committee that your work is not unappreciated. I can understand that this is a major blow, and I mean, I apologize that we cannot pull this off. But I think this board is committed to looking forward with it, and we look forward to partnering with you on that. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you all, you're welcome to stay, it's riveting. We'll just give folks a minute to file out and click on the next item.
Thank you, guys.
All right, the next item is, discussion of the library facilities plan, procurement and management. So there's a memo in the packet that describes the things that are happening. I think we have, Corinne Flaherty, who's the library director, is here, and I thought Fred Shania was here, but that's I see a couple members of the board of trustees, so. Angus, do you want to describe what's before us tonight?
Yep, so the procurement for this, well, just to back up, so town meeting appropriated funds that the Board of Library Trustees has agreed to match or more to do a facility master plan for the library. That's one of the follow-up items from the 5-year strategic plan that the Library Board of Trustees had approved a number of years ago. The procurement to engage consultant, which presumably will be an architect of some sort, falls under a different section of procurement than 30B. It's a designer selection law at the state level, and back in 2019, the board had most recently adopted and then amended the designer selection procedures. So I included a link to those in my memo. Those basically position the select board as the awarding authority for designer selection unless the board delegates or designates that process. So the first question before you is my assumption through this and through the preparation of the draft scope over the summer was that the chief procurement officer would manage the selection process with input from an advisory group, and the draft RFP that was prepared in the run up to town meeting included advisory group comprised of library and town staff, a select board member, 2 members of the library trustee, and a local resident. So the way it's worked with other similar type procurements is the CPO, the procurement officer, administers the process, receives all the proposals. Those are then circulated among this advisory group. They each basically evaluate and rank the proposals. The proposals tend to be shortlisted. They conduct interviews by the advisory group, and they make a recommendation to the procurement officer. Ultimately, it's the procurement officer signing the contract, but she's doing so based on the input from the advisory group. So, in looking back, there hadn't been specific designation of that previously, so we want to make sure that's made clear. The second question is going to be regarding procurement and project completion timeline, and then also getting some guidance on the project team. There was a lot of discussion of that with the library facilities feasibility working group that you and I were both part of, summer with Corinne, Fred, and others. And I think it'd be helpful to everybody to understand, once we get someone under contract, what's the expectation and how that's managed, how the consultants manage. Because I think we need to strike a balance between efficiency of having a point person, which I think Corinne would be ideal in that role, but also making sure that in that capacity, there's enough engagement that, there's, for instance, like Sam Jocelyn, he has got a tremendous knowledge and he's been real helpful in the working group. So we want to make sure we have some clarity on how you expect and how the library board expects the funding to actually be managed.
So, in terms of the project team, is it appropriate to have it be the same as the advisory group, or is that too many people to be the project team?
I don't think that's too many people. I don't personally feel a need to be involved.
Okay.
I think it was great to be part of the scoping effort, but, I would feel a need to be involved with the vendor.
Okay. Corinne, has the Board of Trustees discussed the project team at all?
They have, they met last night and they appointed Monique Landry and Jason Spalding to represent the trustees with Fred as an alternate. And that would be in addition to myself, obviously.
So is this for the RFQ advisory team or for the actual project team to run it?
This was for the RFQ advisory team,
Okay.
but I'm
So-
assuming that the same people will want to continue and, you know, just
That
for,
makes
yeah.
Continuity, right? I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Can you tell us who the other people are? I want to make a.
Well, so let's look, so a select board member, I mean, I would volunteer to do that.
Currently, yeah, I
because
would
I've
hope
been-
so, yeah.
So do you think it's necessary to have a local resident on the project team
For the vendor selection,
for either?
I think it'd be great if there was someone from, say, the Historic District Commission.
Mhm.
It'd be great to have them represented, because obviously,
Yeah,
that's gonna be one of the regulatory issues here.
so that would be the resident member,
Could be.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Brandon,
agree
you
with
guys-
Angus. No, I
Okay.
agree with Angus. You know, either a resident of the historic district or someone from the commission.
Okay. So then that just leaves town staff. So you're saying Sam would be?
I think Sam, I mean, I know Brian hasn't really been involved with this, but he's very knowledgeable, and I
He
think
would
it
be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have him involved.
Okay.
Yeah. He really
So
knows
does
that
that-
building.
Does that sound good to you, Corinne, to have the same group be the advisory for the RFQ as well as the project team to actually implement the work?
It does.
Yeah, I think you would be the chair or the point person of the committee. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
this gets a little nuanced in
Oh, right.
terms of
Appointed.
public meeting, so, if I'll just kind of outline what the law is, and then it's how you set it up. I just wanna make sure everyone's clear on how it goes. So if a project, so-called project team, was to be formally appointed by a public body, whether that was by this body or the library trustees, that would by definition become a public body,
Mhm.
which is subject to open meeting law, which needs minutes and agendas and so forth. In my opinion, that's a lot of overhead, a lot of like paperwork, administrative, that I think becomes a real, I think it actually would interfere with Corinne's ability to manage the vendor if she couldn't talk with a quorum of this, essentially working group without a posted meeting and keeping minutes and so forth. So what the courts have weighed in on this, there was a major case down in the South Shore many years ago where, it had to do with a hiring school super, or a school, I think it was a school person. And the superintendent had convened a group of advisors to help that person vet candidates, but at the end of the day, it was the superintendent's clear authority under the statute to make the appointment. So this advisory group was advisory to the superintendent, who was not a public body. And there was a member of the community who I gather was disgruntled by how things went, and they filed a lawsuit alleging this was a violation of open meeting law. And that what the court found was that it was not a violation, because in that case, the official who unquestionably had the authority, this case the superintendent, was not a public body, was not subject to open meeting, and that the superintendent can convene whomever he or her wishes to help them do their job. It becomes a public body when it's appointed by a public body. So I think in this case, I think Corinne wants to have the benefit of access to this working group. I think I would not recommend going so far as appointing it. And I know this is all counterintuitive, but this is some of the nuance of Massachusetts law that makes it sometimes difficult to operate in the public sector, because you want transparency, and Corinne's gonna, she's talking to her board all the time. She's talking to me regularly. She's very transparent. So just for the public, there's no intent that behind closed doors, but if you get to where she can't like give feedback to the consultant, because she's gonna be in touch with the consultant probably multiple times a week at times during the 8 or 9 months this goes on. It's an intense process. So she needs to be able to kind of use them as a sounding board without having to post a meeting and keep minutes every single time.
And share emails, they wouldn't be able to email.
Correct,
They
yeah,
are.
yeah, exactly, so it's
Chapin would appoint the advisory committee for the RFQ.
for the RFQ,
And
yeah.
then, so Corinne could appoint the advisory group for the project.
Yeah, she could, because she, as a public official, she is not bound to the open meeting law.
How does that sound, Corinne?
That sounds fine.
Okay.
And Corinne, I can share that court case around just because it's a little nuanced. It's pretty, the way I've described it is pretty accurate, but that way just everyone's clear on.
Yeah.
There's like 3 pages about it in the open meeting law
Yeah.
about the working groups, and
Yeah.
I think it cites that, so if
Okay,
anybody has
good.
concerns.
Yeah.
So, and just for anybody listening, part of the scope is, frequent public meetings and sharing of information, so it's not like this is all gonna happen in a vacuum and then we're gonna be hit with the report. So,
Right,
is that
right.
fair, Corinne?
Yeah, that's clear. I think I appreciate, making this easy, so there's not a barrier to us getting this done.
Yeah.
So Corinne will appoint the building committee.
It's not a building committee. It's not a building committee. It's like a,
We got the
yeah,
RFQ advisory committee.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be appointed by Kate.
Yeah.
That's fine. And what's the next step then?
Well, it's called a project team here, but it's same group, but appointed by Corinne.
What's their objective? What are they doing?
To advise Corinne on the implementation of the facilities comprehensive plan.
yeah, like managing the consultant. Corinne had raised a concern. I don't want to speak for you. You can kind of refine this, but she basically said during one of the meetings in the early fall and run up to town meeting that while I think we all agree she is the most appropriately positioned to be the consultants. Like when a consultant has a question, they're gonna call someone. Who are they gonna call? Well, they're gonna call Corinne, which is great, and that's how it should be. But she kind of said, hey, look, I'm not like a building person. I've never like if they have a question and Sam might know more or.
Like code compliance or.
Yeah, so it's a matter of making sure she has the resources and the support to effectively manage the consultant without having to go back to like a committee. Corinne, is that fair? Is that about
Yeah,
right?
no, I think that's fair. I'm a public library director. I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about buildings. And I think, I want people who know about the building and know about the process to be front row so that there isn't any miscommunication.
But she could still call regular meetings of this team.
Yeah.
For updates and whatever.
So how far does the project team go, is my question. What's
Through
through the
like
construction?
project. No, this is just a feasibility.
That's what I meant.
Sure, it's Eddie. Yeah,
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, you're going to actually have to have
like a building committee.
right.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
different.
Okay.
This is not that.
Okay, so it sounds like we all agree, I think, to designate Caitlin Barker, the CPO, to be the, make
Of
the
the RFQ
decision.
committee.
Yeah, and to make the decision.
And to sign the contract.
Yeah, and then in terms of the schedule, I think we talked about that at the last meeting and we.
Well, I got,
26 project
So-
completion.
yeah,
Did you have further input on that, Corinne?
No, I didn't. Assuming that everything goes out in the middle of March, I think that the target was, late fall to come back at the end of right? Is that what we
Yep.
decided?
Yeah, with the intent of the following spring, if there was gonna be additional work going to that town meeting, not the fall town meeting. Correct?
No, not fall town meeting, but we would have the report in hand by fall, so we could consider next steps for spring town meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
so I think the procurement document, if I understand it, is like 100% complete, right? Corinne, other than the dates.
Yes.
So you mentioned March, and I think that went to a conversation.
the library.
Not to kind of,
Corinne is going
initiate
remotely.
sooner, in the interest of getting someone under contract, say, by
Well,
March or April?
I was trying to spread out the procurement. We have so many going on right now and it's not necessary to do it right now.
Right,
I mean,
okay,
it'll be
yeah,
good,
I
so-
think it's just a matter of, I know where I'm not personally gonna be involved, I'm not.
But I am, so.
You are, yeah.
Fred and Corinne both agreed to that at the last
Okay.
meeting, so
Okay.
if that's so good with you and Monique and
Yeah.
Jason, then, okay.
No, that we updated the trustees last night about the March 15th date, and they were fine with that.
Okay, great. All right, so we do need an action, a vote here. Angus,
Yes, yep.
For all three items, so.
I think really it's the main one is, let's see,
To designate.
the board approving authority may delegate any duties prescribed. So I think that's the vote I would look for, is to specifically authorize the procurement officer to manage the designer selection process and to award and execute a contract.
I'll make that as a motion. That
All right,
Second.
so further discussion, do we need to memorialize these other two things that we've generally agreed on, or?
I don't think you need to, and I think it, in a way, is much better if you, like, it's the spirit of it is clear,
Okay.
but I think if you were to vote it,
Okay,
it could raise questions.
all right, and so Monique is online, right, or she was?
Let me see.
I just wanna make sure everybody is in alignment, you know, that.
Yeah,
there's
Monique is on. Fred is not.
Okay, but you are, and you're the queen.
I am.
Okay.
That's a big title.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi, Monique, sorry to make you. Okay. All right, anything else on this, Corinne, Monique? Are we good?
No, we're good. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Corinne.
Thank you.
All right, next item D, adoption of a proposed select board policy for responding to land acquisition inquiries. So, this item, there's been multiple discussions on, this is another one, both at open space committee meetings and at the last meeting, everybody that was here spoke what they thought. At the end of the meeting, I agreed to wait until our third member Ross was here, but I did say that there'd be no further discussion, just in the interest of time. But I just want to kind of quickly go over what this is about. Past practice of responding to potential land acquisition opportunities, I'm talking before Angus was here. Greenbelt, who's typically our partner, would go to the open space committee. They would meet in executive session. And then they would like work out what they thought the town could contribute, come up with, like, is it gonna be CPA application, is it grant funding? And then that would, I assume, go to the select board. I don't know what happened before you were here. Since Angus has been here, sometimes Greenbelt goes to the open space committee and does the executive session approach. Sometimes they've gone directly to Angus and then he's brought in the chair and brought it to the select board. So the purpose of this committee, of this policy, is just to have a process that everybody understands. And really it's to not shut the open space committee out, which was how it landed with them, but it's to bring more people in, so that we have a fair process, that other potential groups that could have an interest are involved in. It's been asked, like, why, if this is not broken, why fix it? And to me, the things that are not broken but could be improved on is not having the town manager involved right from the beginning, I think is problematic. Because that position knows what all other committee and boards are working on, if there's a potential water interest or an agricultural interest. It also doesn't bring the select board in right at the very beginning, and given that we have to sign the CR, as well as support any funding applications, I think being in at the very beginning is really important. And then something we've learned recently is that practice of using executive session to discuss a land acquisition by a third party, such as Greenbelt, is actually not in compliance with the open meeting law. So that was the reason to kind of formulate a policy. As I said, the intent is not to exclude the open space committee. And because that was how it was interpreted, I think there's room to maybe modify the language in the policy that makes it, can you bring that email up? Originally, the policy had said that the person like Greenbelt or Land Trust would go to the town manager, and that position would decide who to engage. What I proposed to the open space committee at one of their meetings is having the open space committee chair be part of any conversation, whether or not it was a climate change purchase or water purchase, they would be like a standing member of that. The committee, I think, was so against this whole idea of a policy change from past practice that they didn't want to be party to any modifications. They just didn't want to own it. So to me, that addresses the concern. I think, Chris, you also said you thought the select board chair or a designee should be in it.
I think
as well.
both open space chair and an open space designee and a select board, either the chair or the select board designee, should all be notified at the same time.
Mhm.
And that way everybody's on the same page, and I'll have other comments once you get done.
Yeah, so I mean, this is what I took a stab at. I mean, it's a very simple change. So this is what I would propose. I think this satisfies our intent for this, and it also satisfies the open space committee's intent, you know, to be part of it as well from the very beginning. So I'll look for select board comments, and then if we have people from the open space committee that want to comment on this change and whether it's something that they can get behind, we can do that. So what do you think?
I think the wording's good.
Okay.
I had similar, but yours is better, so we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Um, Can I address another?
Sure.
At this time? In previous meetings, people have said, it's not broke, why fix it? That there hadn't been negotiations done previously. And I hear that, but from my perspective, I don't see that. And I've been on the select board here for 3 years, and there are two significant property acquisition / joint ventures. And that'd be Sawmill Brook and Evergreen Farm. And I think both of those had, again, from my perspective, issues that I think I would have looked at differently. So rather than discuss both, I'll pick one, and that happens to be the Evergreen Farm. And we met in executive session with Essex County Greenbelt. When they came in, it was basically told, here's the deal. We've got Fish and Game wants to contribute, Greenbelt will contribute, a couple is buying the farm, they will contribute, and we looked at the town to contribute. And it was a very, very aggressive time schedule. And there wasn't an opportunity presented for the select board to offer a different option, because this was the plan, this was the time frame, and if we didn't do it, it was gonna go away. And then Open Space had a sidewalk out there, which I attended. We walked up to the top of the hill and we're told about how beautiful the land is and implications of the opportunities to hike it and everything else. The town went forward with it, and then there was a lot of documents thrown at the select board over a number of meetings, and it was very difficult to keep track of. And at one point I said, well, where is the component about having trails? We were told straight out, the town doesn't have any option for trails on this property. I was stunned. So what had happened is the town was buying protection on a property that the people farming could then use. So I don't recall the number, it was $300,000 or $400,000, I believe, that the town contributed to this. So what we did is we invested a lot of money for a piece of land we can look at. And I don't think that that's a good use of taxpayers' money. And if this had come to the select board in a different fashion without a pre-negotiated deal, I would have strongly advocated for this property to engage Fish and Game, because I understand their need for protection around the Ash Street Swamp based on what's out there for wildlife. And then I would have suggested we take a CPA money, a CPC, whatever it is, and I would have preferred the town to purchase the entirety of their property, so you would have control over it, because we have no control over this property at this point. I think that's a huge disservice to the town and the taxpayers. I will say, I feel like I was asleep at the wheel on it, and I feel like it was not. It's nice to protect the land. I don't think the town got much benefit for the dollars they put in. So that's why I think to have all the interested parties engaged moving forward, you could have a better result. So that's.
I would just briefly note on that particular initiative that the first notice that my office received on that opportunity was August 25th of 2023. It actually went to town meeting, and the funds were appropriated on October 23rd of 2023. So less than 2 months from the very first notice, to where, you know, the landowner accepted the offer on September 11th, the CPA funding application came in September 21st. And the vote was taken by town meeting, you know, October 23rd. So I remember, you know, we turned ourselves inside out. At that point, we were right in the tail end of working on the prior Sawmill Brook, which, you know, of the CR and the encroachment and all that. And I remember this came up and it was just, you know, we kind of dropped everything, we made it happen and it happened. But it was definitely suboptimal in terms of, you know, the amount of time, and that was just for this board. You know, it was for the community, it kind of came out of nowhere. It did pass. But yeah, there is no public access to that land.
So do you feel like a policy like this would have helped with that, Chris?
Yes, because obviously Greenbelt knew about this months in advance. And I can't say open space did, but somebody did because they were directed at a late date. If we'd known 6, 8 months, a year in advance, I think the town could have, or should have, looked at other options on this property. To put money into it and not have, and Angus just stated, public access. Yeah, you get a level of protection because it's not houses built there, but I'm not sure that's a good value. And I think you could have had a different opportunity. And there's a lot of money sitting in this CPA funds, and I think this would have actually been a magnificent use of those funds. So,
Okay. Ross, anything you wanna add?
No, I agree with what you just said. I did. They have a lot of interest in that. We as the executive body certainly should timely input in the memo.
and I have to say, I don't mean any disrespect for Greenbelt. I think they're a great partner.
Mhm.
And I appreciate what they do with the protections. I just think we as a town can do better for the residents. So I'm not
No, I.
trying to diminish Greenbelt. They do great work.
Yeah, okay. Carol, is Carol Decker on?
I am here.
Hi, Carol. So as the chair of the Open Space Committee, are you willing to comment on the way the policy is now worded? Is that something that you feel like is acceptable?
It is acceptable. I'm glad that the Open Space Committee, that the chair has been invited to be part of these meetings, because I think it's really important that it is more than just the town manager and select board. So I do like the way it sits.
Okay, and I was intentional to say chair or their designee, so if,
Yes.
you know, in future iterations, there was somebody that was like your land guru, you know, that would be fine for them to be the point person. You know?
Excellent. No, thank you.
So her be the best person for
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Patricia, I assume that's your hand that's up?
It is my hand, and I really just wanted to correct any impression that someone might have gotten from Chris's comment that the Open Space Committee negotiated the deal on Evergreen Farm or Sawmill, because both would be incorrect. The Open Space Committee does not negotiate a deal with Greenbelt and its owners. Greenbelt brings the offer or the possibility of an offer to the Open Space Committee, after which the Open Space Committee takes it to the Select Board. So the final negotiation with Greenbelt is always with the Select Board.
Yeah. Right, anything further on this motion?
Make a motion to accept the potential land acquisition policies as presented with the amendments.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Angus, that is 28 if it's alphabetical order in the policies, the way that I wrote that. just
Okay.
for your-
Okay, good. All right, great. All right, we'll get that built in and posted.
Okay, next item is approval of the Human Resources Manager job description and pay grade and direction to post and fill the position. And there's a notation that this is instead of the budgeted program project manager position in the budget. I don't know if John's watching the Celtics or whether he's still on, but here we are.
Hi, John.
So in the packet is a draft job description. So this has been reviewed by key staff that currently have personnel duties, correct, Angus?
Yes.
So there've been several changes to that. Did you want to go over anything specific in your menu, memo?
I would just, kind of, the question was, raised earlier, I think a very fair question as to why the board is considering this potentially as a, relatively greater need than project management. And, I think, in a nutshell, there's only so much time in the day or opportunity cost, so, time spent toward, personnel administration inherently cuts out time toward other things, so it's kind of a zero-sum game in a way. The personnel administration in any organization of this size is quite a bit. There's a lot that goes into it. Most of that is outside the public view because it's personnel matters, or it's union contract negotiations, or it's workers' comp claims, or there's 100 things that go into it. And so the job description that's in front of you tonight is draft. It started with a draft that Wendy prepared, which I appreciate very much that she took the lead on that. And you sent it along to me. I had a meeting with the core staff who were involved with that, which includes my assistant, Rebecca Ambra, as well as the town accountant, Jenny Walsh, and the treasurer collector, Kate Gilbert. That is the personnel administration team. It's the four of us. And I went through and basically looked at what some of the functions in some of the job descriptions are. I will say probably 3/4 of what's in this job description is not in anyone's job description. It is my job. Under the Town Manager Act, I have broad responsibility for personnel administration. I have very little authority for personnel administration. The policies are entirely set by the board. The board sets position classifications, salary, wages, any kind of step increase, anything that, for instance, in contrast to my prior job up north, where I had the town manager under the town charter had quite a lot of authority on those things. Here in West Newbury, the town manager has essentially zero authority. It all goes through the board. It's a very different form of government than other towns that have someone with my title. So that makes it, it's part of what we do. Everything we do, we follow the statute, we follow the policies, but it does make it more time intensive, and a lot of the things that are not currently specified in anyone's job description are in fact getting done. Just about everything in here is getting done. It's an enormous amount of time. And so, this is just one little example, but one thing in here is to kind of maintain all the job descriptions, maintain updates, and kind of keeping job descriptions current. We did a major effort on that, as you know, back in 2022 with wage classification study. We did a comprehensive evaluation townwide, although that did not include union positions, and it didn't include certain seasonal positions, but for them, it included about 45 positions. So it included the vast majority of jobs. That was an extremely time-intensive process, getting all the job descriptions updated. Every one of those was reviewed with the employee. They gave input. It was all a very iterative process, very time-intensive process. And what we do kind of in the regular course of things is we're always looking at job descriptions, especially when there's turnover. Before we'll post a job, we look at it, we work with the outgoing employee to say, is there anything that you're doing that ought to be in here? Because we don't want to slip through the cracks when a new person's hired. Or is there anything that's in here that really you're not doing and we shouldn't continue to have it in there? So we do that on an iterative basis. It's very important to keep those current, because that's really the basis of how positions are classified, which ties into compensation. The reason I bring that up is I think we do a really good job at that, but we do it on a kind of opportunistic basis. If there's turnover in a position, we focus on that job description before we repost it. So for instance, when Chief Dwyer's admin resigned a few months ago, first thing we do is we work with Chief Dwyer to make sure the job description before we post it is complete and accurate as to what he needs in that position. So I'm putting time in that. Rebecca's putting a lot of time in that. But we are not doing that on like a comprehensive town-wide basis. It would be, I mean, we don't have that kind of bandwidth, so there are things that are being done right now that are in this job description, but they're more on an either ad hoc or opportunistic basis. They're not done on a, you know, methodical year-round basis. So that's the difference of not having an HR person per se, is everything that needs to be done is competing for time, just like all the other things. So I know, you know, Amanda's worked in other communities, larger communities. I've worked in larger communities like Westford and Marshfield. They have an HR person and sometimes a department. In Westford, you know, they have 3 full-time people administering HR. Westford's 4 times bigger than us. But the point is, you know, the
It's the
town
same
manager.
functions though, like you still have to do payroll.
Oh, yeah, you still gotta,
Yeah.
yeah, we deal with 100 and they're all unique. All of the situations are unique and they're all, you know, case specific and they're all very time intensive. So, you know, we do the best we can and I think frankly, I think we do a good job. And I will tell you for certain that compared to what I walked into in 2018, it is night and day. Now, not everyone may know that or whatever, but I can tell you that very, very clearly. There were things that went on prior to the town manager.
Part of the problem is you take this on and then you're here at 11 o'clock at night doing other things. So
Yes, that's right.
these are tasks. I felt almost embarrassed when somebody brought up that we need an HR person, because once it hits you and you see all the functions that they should be doing and that you and 3 or 4 other people are having to deal with on top of your regular jobs, I felt negligent that we hadn't thought of this earlier. I think it's probably the most critical position that can really codify so many things in one place. I think it's absolutely necessary. I just, whoever came up with the concept of it, I thank them very much.
Well, I do think it was Wendy, because I think you were looking at kind of.
I thought so, but I don't wanna hail down to it too much.
You know, and what's the issue that kind of week in, week out drains my office's bandwidth, you know, to the tune of 10 or 15 hours a week. And I mean, I've been saying since 2018, look, I'm the town manager, I'm the finance director, because they got rid of the finance director when they hired me, and I'm the HR manager. And you know, that's one thing I think people who've been watching these meetings for years know that, but when they created the town manager form of government, they not only did not increase the headcount of this town, they actually decreased staffing. The finance director who preceded me had more hours of budgeted support staff than I had. So just for the record, like I was hired with this high profile job, tons of responsibility, fully capable of doing the job. But they got rid of the finance director. So I'm the one, you know, issuing debt and, you know, annual reports and the hundred of things that go into running this town financially. Even taking on a lot of things that the select board used to do, like signing the AP warrants used to be the select board. That's now what I do. It's something I do every single week. I'm here every single Saturday working on it because I can't find time during the week. That's something that when they had a full-time finance director, they weren't doing that. When they had a full-time finance director, that person wasn't going to select board meetings. That person was not even going to finance committee meetings. So just for the record, you know, I'm basically doing 3 jobs. And this is one that if this, you know, if this was in place, if the board goes this direction, there's no question it would have an immense impact on bandwidth in my office and in the accounting and treasurer collector office as well. So I think it's a great initiative.
Yeah, so did you have any specific comments on the job description? You did. Okay.
Just very, I think it's great. Talks about bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bullet point 6, it talks about performance evaluations. And I guess my only comment there, they would do the performance evaluations in conjunction with the employee supervisor.
Wait, which quote are you on?
Right there. It just says performance evaluation, dead nuts in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
I would say performance evaluations in conjunction with the employee supervisor.
Yeah, the supervisor.
Well, I don't want them, I don't want this person.
Okay.
I
I mean, they would be managing it. making sure
They'd be
people get
managing
their-
the process, but the evals would still be conducted by the direct supervisor.
I just think that should be specific.
But yeah, they'd be kind of coordinating it, doing the
Documenting
scheduling.
it, all that, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you know,
fine.
record keeping and as well as you know, one of the ways we have administered performance emails in the last couple of cycles is, you know, we always make sure there's a third party present. It's the supervisor, it's the employee, and a third
But
person.
this is that third party that they
This
don't
is
have to
that
have somebody
third,
else.
yeah.
I'm just saying, they don't do the evaluation, they're there for the review. I
Exactly.
just want that to be clear because
Yeah.
if I'm the supervisor, I'm taking that away from me and it's,
No,
I just
no,
be
yeah,
very
no,
clear.
yeah, that's 100% accurate. So, yeah, so for instance, that typically is gonna be Rebecca, but I might include, you know, Jenny instead, if it's like within, you know, within our office, or for instance, if it's you know, like the town planner, I met with the planning board chair was part of that eval, or the conservation agent, the conservation chair. So it's yeah, who that third person is varies. But the eval is performed by the direct supervisor, but the HR person would coordinate all of that.
And then I'd just like to add another bullet point, and this be something to the effect of, this person will review all of the policies and bylaws to confirm that they align with the new HR position and present suggested modifications to the town manager select board. Because these things are floating kind of everywhere as to who does what. So once you bring this position in, you've got to bring those all under that roof, and that's got to be that position's
Responsibility.
primary
Yeah.
objective to start.
So that was done with the job descriptions of the 4 that currently do personnel,
Mhm.
right? You took things out that will now be in this job description.
Well, we haven't formally, but if you,
That's-
I've marked up each of the 3. I haven't changed, my job description set by statute,
Yeah.
so that's, is what it is. But the other 3 I've marked up with what are the functions that would now be
Okay,
migrated to, this position.
but you're talking about
But
bylaws.
just if there's any discrete, we have things that float,
I know.
where's the place policies and bylaws, and somebody gets this because, you know. Well, the Concom and how they just, when you get deep into the weeds on some of these things, it's like, how did that ever happen?
Mm.
So I think somebody's gotta make sure everything is in alignment when this position starts, and then
Yeah.
would be helpful.
So one topic that, I've been asked about is this person's reporting, and it says in here that they report to the town manager. And if you look at the Town Manager Act, all department heads report to the town manager. There's a concern with if this person is gonna be viewed as an employee resource, you know, if they're having challenges. Can that person be impartial if they report to the town manager? And my response is, yeah, the personnel privacy is protected by law, by employment law. I mean, this is a high level professional person, so. I think there may be a perception issue, but I don't think it's a real issue, but it's just something to be
Who
aware
would
of.
they report to?
Well, some people said, well, they should report to the select board, but that's not, you know, we're
How it
not,
works.
yeah, well, we're not the appointing authority. We are for the police chief, but not for this. So the Town Manager Act lays out who the select board is the appointing authority for, and for this position, it would be a department head, so it would be the town manager. I just want to make everybody clear about that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what would govern their work, the select board is responsible for personnel policies. And, you know, it's clear, and they're responsible for keeping the town in compliance with local, state, and federal labor law, which is immensely complex. So, you know, obviously, you're gonna hire, we're gonna hire an ethical person
Right.
who's a professional, who knows their job and who does their job. So, you know, there wouldn't be interference with that any more than there's interference with, I mean, there's nothing, you know. Like anyone raising that question is essentially questioning my ethics. I've been
No,
doing this
I don't
for
think so.
25 years, and my ethics have never been questioned
Yeah.
in 25 years. So
But I
unless
just think it's better to
I
address.
just want to be clear, because I hear some of the same stuff that Chris hears,
Mhm.
and I just want to be clear that in 25 years, my ethics, and I've been in public service for 25 years, have never been questioned, and other than here in West Newbury. And I'm not a different person than I ever was, so I think that.
I don't think it's your ethics. I think the concern is this personnel manager, are they just gonna tell you if somebody doesn't like, you know, had a bad experience with you or whatever, and I think it's.
Yeah, I didn't interrupt you.
No, sorry.
Well, I was just thinking, you know, 10 years down the road, right? If the town manager were to do something just ostensibly inappropriate and it was reported to the HR manager, who would the HR manager then, how would that HR manager address that issue? If they're only supposed to report to the town manager. So it is kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, because
There'll be a grievance.
yeah,
right?
the grievance process would
Oh, okay.
basically, you know, I would be, or the whomever's town manager at that point would be recused from that process. So it would skip over the town manager, go right to the board.
Okay, so then, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I do think there's a separate issue. If something doesn't rise to the level of a grievance and it's more of a concern, which is often how things start and it's more informal. I think in practice, the HR manager would, and if it was to do with the town manager, either myself or its successor. I think in practice, the HR manager would be cultivating a relationship with the select board's personnel liaison, which at this point is Wendy, that could change in the future. The reason the board set that up with a liaison is that allows the board through that person to have full visibility on personnel matters as appropriate without having the whole board have visibility, because once the board is looking at a personnel matter under open meeting law, that triggers a requirement for 48 hours written notice to the employee that they are going to be the subject of discussion before a board. The written notice by law has to say that it's their right, whether the discussion's an open session or executive session, and has to, by law, advise them of their right to be present and of their right to be represented by counsel. So this is all specified in Mass General Law. But what that means is if let's say the HR manager wanted to bring a personnel concern to the board, you would legally have to send that employee a letter saying the board's going to be discussing you, you have the right to be present, you have the right to counsel. All of a sudden their blood pressure spikes. So there's no way basically to handle, there's no way for a public body like a board to handle a personnel matter without bringing it to an 11. That's the whole reason, and we talked to Tim Zestin, our town council, about this years ago. And he said that's the whole reason towns go to a town manager, because it allows personnel administration to happen between the manager and the employee and kind of the HR function without everything going to an 11 in terms of like a public body and that kind of notice. So the way we've kind of split the difference here is to ensure that the board has full visibility is through the board's liaison.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Are you all good or, Catherine, did you have a question or comment?
Hi, I did have a question. First of all, I agree with Chris Weil and what you've been saying, where when you read this document and this job description, it really is astounding that we haven't had an HR manager before now. I think this is a great thing. My question is that we're talking about taking a budgeted salary that was allotted to a project manager slot. And I notice in this that we're looking to pay this HR person a grade D position. So my question is what we currently have budgeted for a project manager, is that going to be pretty much the same dollar amount for an HR position? And is this HR position going to be full-time, or is it going to be similar to the project manager slot of 32 hours a week?
So originally the project manager position was 40 hours a week. At the employee's request, the hours were dropped. I think for this budget, I'm anticipating the HR manager will be a higher salary. Is that fair?
Yeah, it would be a higher grade.
Yeah, so for this, the remainder of this budget year, because we've not had a project manager for several months, I think we'll be fine. In fact, we may not even hire a project manager before, April. I don't know how long it'll take to do it. But going forward, you're right, in next year's town manager budget, there will have to be an increase to cover this position.
Well,
Okay.
and one thing, if I could, I think this responds to a couple of prior questions or comments. I am not, assuming the board goes this direction, I am not telling you I'm not gonna propose a project manager in the FY27 budget. That would be a significant increase in the budget, and I will fully adhere to and respect whatever decision that the select board and FinCom make. But just because this position is needed, doesn't mean the other one isn't needed. It just
So that'll come up on the next issue, though, too,
Yeah.
the organizational assessment.
Right. Yeah.
They sort of
Yeah.
play hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, since Christine Wallace left at the end of September, that's between there and now is about 500 hours that she would have been here. So anyone can understand, like, that's a lot of, work that would have gotten done that either hasn't gotten done or it's gotten done by me or other staff kind of cobbling together what time we have. But, the reason we created that position, the town created that position about, 4 budget years ago is because at that time, Wayne and I were, it was needed. It was filled for 3 years. It was very helpful. And I do think if the town doesn't refill that position, residents will see a reduction in level of service from what they've been accustomed to for the last 3 years when we did have that position.
But not baseline service. These are.
No, these are all, these are all
Yeah.
what we've described as value added.
Yeah, I think
projects.
that's important. I mean,
Yeah.
my opinion is that we should not be chasing these huge projects that require a project manager
Mhm.
above and beyond our conservation agent or town planner. But I think, as Chris said, the next item on the agenda looks at that and to have somebody come in and do an assessment of our staffing structure and, what really is appropriate for a town our size. So.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, and I'll just, the last thing I'll say, but, for those who, have been in municipal government a long time, I mean, Prop 2.5 was approved in 1980. Since that time, there's been a hard cap on the ability of cities and towns to increase their budgets. This issue of capacity and bandwidth is an issue of 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, maybe not Boston, 350. So if you just think about that in 45 years, what has changed in terms of society, laws, regulations, linear miles of roads, like level of service is astounding what has changed. And since that time, cities and towns, short of an override, are constrained by Prop 2.5. So I'm not trying to complain or whine about it. It's just a fact of running a municipal organization is towns have been doing more with less for decades. And so, we'll talk later about the work plan and where things are, but it's there's just only so many people to carry forward the work. And what has happened as a result of municipal budgets being squeezed year after year after year for 45 years is that the baseline services, the required things that we're required to do by law, tend to get relatively more and more time to where there's really not any time for all these special projects. And the only reason they have gotten done for the 7.5 years I've been here is me and a core of other staff have worked unbelievable hours. And you would not have seen what you've seen without that. If we worked full time, I mean, come on, like,
Yeah.
It would be shocking to people. So
in terms of the grade structure, Angus says, the designation proposed a grade D, that seems appropriate to me. That's in line with the treasurer collector.
What does that put in the dollar range of there?
Do you have a current range?
yes, actually,
Is this also just comparatively, while you're, I don't want to interrupt before you get the response to that last question, but just comparatively for this type of role at similar sized towns, is this, because it does seem like an overwhelming job scope, but is this normal for an HR manager in municipal government?
you mean to have one or?
Just like,
The extent of responsibility.
yeah,
we looked at different job descriptions and some of this came from stuff we're doing that's already in, job description. Although, like I said, 75 or 80% of what's in here is not specifically in anyone's job description right now. It's implicitly in mine, by statute, but,
well, on there, right now, little person.
But it's not,
Yeah.
but for an HR person who does this as a career, this is
yeah.
not overwhelming.
It's
what you
a
do.
job. Yeah. I mean, Rebecca and I go every year. We go to the Mass Municipal HR. They have a couple of full-day conferences. We go every year, and every year we do the best we can. We absorb what we can. These are great conferences, but we always come away from those with that sense of like, for all you know, the amount, like the complexity of this stuff, the litigation when it comes to like collective bargaining or arbitration. Yeah.
And it's only gonna increase, it's.
It's increased every single year, it's dizzying, so, I had meant to put in the range in the packet and I forgot, so.
All right,
But I can find it, because you guys voted it back in. It's gonna be in one of your packets from May or June. So if you can keep talking, but I'll find it.
See who finds it first. All right, anything else on this? Are we ready to?
Well, yeah, I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Ann.
So is this anticipated as a full-time position?
Yes.
I was just wondering, kind of piggybacking on what Ross was saying. One of the things that makes it so challenging for 350 towns is that we don't regionalize around a lot of these kinds of things. And it seems as if the skill set that's needed in every little town of 4,500 or 5,000 or 6,000 people. Is there a job sharing potential here?
I mean, there could be, as part of preparing this, I looked at some, and actually the next agenda item, some organizational assessments that have been done for other towns. And commonly, there'll be a shared HR person, and the recommendation is don't do that, you need your own person. So, that's anecdotal, out of that 3. But if you look at this job description, that certainly seems like enough to keep full-time.
I visualize each of the tasks that they have to do and what that takes. And, Angus and I did the negotiation with the unions. The amount of hours that alone took, I mean, Angus will tell you hundreds, because everything to Angus is 100 hours. But it was awful, just that one task alone. And I like that, because select board people rotate in and out, town managers can, but when you have this position, all those union negotiations, the contracts, the historical context will be there. Because the unions pretty well get the leg up on you when you start the negotiations. And it's like, I just hope I'm here for the next round, because I understand what happened here and the previous cycle. So this position can, just to codify that, would take a good bit of work. So somebody said, could you contract this out too? I think there's so much here, and the benefit is so great. I think it really does merit a dedicated full-time position.
Well, Wendy knows, I've been an advocate, vocal advocate for professionalizing HR in this town for a number of reasons. So I think it's great. And I suppose you're right. It takes as long as it takes to negotiate the union contract, whether the union has 10 members or 1,000 members.
Right.
So the small town thing is very inefficient in many ways.
And that's just one of the items. I mean, there's so many items on here, and I think the efficiencies the town will gain with this is pretty significant. And I think me, I hate spending money on anything. I look at, if I gotta spend money, I look at it as an investment. I think that's exactly what this is. I think you get a pretty good return on your investment, this position.
Did you find it, Angus?
I'm really having a hard time finding it. I'm finding, it looks like it was on the agenda.
Let's get into the
I've got it.
paper file.
Yeah, I mean, I can go print it.
Oh, look at this.
My goal is fiscal year 2026.
Is that the one with the range per grade?
It's got each town manager assesses the.
Well, so that's
employee
the
compensation
actual,
schedule.
that's the per employee.
You have the wage schedule, which is just the.
It's the one pager. I meant to put that in the packet. I obviously forgot.
No, this is too specific, but you could pick a grade D. 85,000. On one of them. Let me see what the other.
What was the step on that?
3.
Okay,
So grade D
probably the
7
low
is
of
95. So you're looking
80,
okay.
82 up to, I do think it goes to
100.
right around 100.
Yeah, it's a grade D 9. So you're looking 82 to 101,000.
That's about right.
Okay, that's all I need is a rough.
Okay.
I think I don't wanna go too light, not get legitimate applicants.
All right, so we ready to vote on this? The vote would be to,
Move the job description, okay, agree?
and direct, post and fill a position. Would it also be with respect to Patricia's question to modify the org chart, or? do you-
Yes, yeah. Well, and that would be what you voted back in June with that specific salary wage per employee is it would yeah, that's what's,
Okay,
I mean, that corresponds to that work chart behind you on the wall, but.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll make the motion, it'll be sloppy, but here goes.
all right,
To approve the human resources finance job description, to approve the posting of a position at a grade D salary, to modify the org chart as discussed, and to include the two modifications that I had mentioned.
and the job description.
Yes.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so you're gonna get right on this tomorrow, right?
We will get right on, yeah.
Okay. All right. Next item is approval of a draft organizational assessment scope of work and adding it to the town work plan. So this is kind of the follow-on to what I was talking about. You know, if we do this, do we need a town manager? And I feel like the best way to go about this is to have somebody professional come in, look at our staffing structure, identify any gaps. You know, and then, you know, secondarily will be to look at, you know, the transition from town manager form. I mean, this is what I'm proposing, you know, feel free to, if you want it in here or not, but I think it's a good opportunity to look at our governance and whether, you know, as Angus said, the Town Manager Act is adequate in terms of giving him the authority that a town manager needs to operate the town. I'd like to also look at the boards and committees and make sure, you know, the structure is appropriate and we're in alignment there. I mean, I see this as kind of a precursor to a town charter, which is one of the items in the comprehensive plan. So those are my thoughts. I kind of did a lot of research online and identified things that I thought were appropriate here. But what do you think?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, I'm kind of like in the dark at this point. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is we come up with a scope we think is appropriate and then start talking to vendors and see, you know, I'm sure they have kind of off the shelf scopes, but I think we need to identify what's important to us first and.
I think you sent one of these assessments from Manchester by the state.
Yeah.
And I read through that and said,
Mhm.
you know, they come up with the recommendations at the end too, like you shouldn't have this, you ought to do that. And I thought that was very helpful.
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody's talked to Manchester to find out in hindsight how beneficial they found it, but I think
Yeah.
we could use this enlightenment.
Yeah, Amanda gave me the contacts there, so I can reach out. I just didn't wanna be premature if the board's not supportive of them.
Oh, again, I'm very supportive of it. Don't know, we're looking at dollars and cents to put together.
Yeah, so originally I was thinking it'd be something, you know, relatively quick. We could use money in the town manager budget and maybe a FinCom reserve but I think this isn't important enough that we should make it be a warrant article, you know, bring it to spring town meeting. Ideally, I put in here a schedule of 3 months over the summer. I think, you know, a fair amount of this will be interviews with department heads and I think perhaps summer's a good time to do it. Is that fair, Angus, or just in terms of impacting, you know,
Yeah.
operation?
You know, what's the idea is I wrote, can the schedule be accelerated?
So, well, do you have a funding source for it? I mean, that's the only
I
reason.
don't know what it costs. Do we know the cost? I don't know what this was.
Do you have an idea, Angus?
I really don't, no, I do think, I mean, you could, if you had a scope that you liked, you could shop it around to, there's a number of firms, as you know, who specialize in this type of thing. You could undertake that vendor selection prior to town meeting, obviously you couldn't sign a contract until funding was appropriated, but that would at least get it teed up, and that way, if the funding was approved, you could sign a contract the next day, and they could be at work, you know, the last week of April, which I think would be a plus. You could potentially, I think, you know, if we had to find something like on the order of $10,000 in the operating budget, I think we could do that. So you could potentially have them like start the work and not do more than X amount, with the risk that if the funding's not approved, you kind of end up with a half-done work product. So there are different things you can do depending on how aggressive you want to be at the time.
Yeah, we're just being mindful of all the other things that are, I mean, we're heading into budget season.
I'm fine with the timeline. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
just,
really feel like we can't look to them.
well, I think it's appropriate to go to town meeting and let the
Yeah.
voters understand what you're doing too. I mean, I don't want to do this without,
Like,
yeah, I think they should have the opportunity to have a say on, I'm fine with it.
So were there any things that you think are important that were not identified here? terms of tasks or?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to offer, this may be a little bit far afield, but you said something that got me thinking. You said this, could be a precursor to, looking at a town charter. I think, I've been saying for 7 years, I think a town charter would be really, really helpful for the town of West Newbury. If that, ends up being looked at in the future, in the next, 2 or 3 years, I certainly wouldn't presuppose what the outcome would be. One of the things about the critique I offered earlier about the Town Manager Act, obviously I wasn't here any part of writing that. I was hired after it was adopted by town meeting and the legislature. One of the things I've critiqued since 2018 is I think it's actually quite misleading that they called it a town manager, because having been a town manager elsewhere and coming here, and I know Amanda's pointed out in the 7 or 8 months she's been with us, she's like, relative to Linfield or whatever, she's like, the number of things that I bring through the board that like typically the town manager does. I'm not saying that's bad. It's very inefficient. It makes things take a lot longer. It contributes to workload and bandwidth, but, and it makes things take longer. But in my opinion, it would have been a lot more intellectually honest for those who did draft the Town Manager Act to call it a Town Administrator Act, because those are two very different positions. And in practice, my position is much more like a town administrator at best. It's almost in some ways like an executive
But
assistant.
I don't know that we don't want a town, we want a town manager.
Well, but I guess, there's a lot of controversy in town. There's a lot of people who may or may not have complete information. I just think when you go into a process like that, it's really important to not presuppose the outcome. And if the town of West Newbury and its voters and their infinite wisdom want something that's more like, like a secretary to the board, then have them vote that, but don't hire someone as a town manager and then,
Yeah, well, I mean,
like it's kind of disingenuous right now.
yeah, so that's one of the tasks, is to evaluate the functioning within the context of the Town Manager Act and
Yeah.
identify inconsistencies. I mean, this is just identifying what the problems are. If
Right.
the follow-up is, yeah, we do want a town administrator, then, I don't think this is wasted.
No,
But
I don't think so at all.
it
No,
gives them the
I just, when you said that specific, I just wanted, just for those who are
Yeah.
watching, there's trade-offs with all of these. Different forms of governments in terms of efficiency, professionalism, capacity, transparency, all of those things. There are trade-offs and there's reasons. Some towns choose one or another, and that, ultimately is up to the town how they want to do that. That any change right now, we're going to be governed by the Town Manager Act unless and until that changes. That is the law of the land, and that's what we follow. And in order to change that, that's a legislative process with both the town meeting and through a special act on Beacon Hill.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would like to get out of town operations and be the policy entity, which is, what the select board should be.
That's more like how a town manager form
Well, that's
would
what I'm
work.
saying,
Right.
but that's not.
Right now, like it's called a town manager form, but it really is not when you read the details of that.
All right, so next step is to reach out to a couple firms. I had 3 firms that I identified that are local, and if they're a combis firm, does that help us at all in terms of procurement? Is there
If they're on the state, if they're on
Yeah.
the pre-qualified state bid list, then that they have already gone through a bid process and you could just hire them without going through a.
Without getting
bid process.
multiple, is this like a engine, how would this fall under 30B, this kind of contract?
I'd have to ask Caitlin that.
Okay. Right,
But generally, if someone's on the bid list, a city or town can simply call them up and hire them because they have already gone through a procurement process to get on that list.
yeah. All right, so this is a discussion item. What I would propose is I'll kind of talk to a couple firms and see if they have,
Action items.
is it action?
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
Well, to add it to the work plan.
Well, and also, I guess, to move forward, right, if this is something we're in agreement on doing. Right,
Need a motion?
yes, I do.
Make a motion to approve the draft organizational assessment scope and add it to the work plan.
With the time frame of,
I didn't put a time frame on it.
Well, that's the whole reason of the work plan.
Oh, immediate.
You think it should be immediate? Well, with the intention of it being after.
We know it's gonna have to wait till the final town meeting, yeah, but I mean, you start on a meeting.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so next steps is to talk to the vendors though, get some feedback, right? So we wanna see whether the scope should be enhanced, what the dollars are. That's,
Yeah, then we have to start it.
okay, I'll just making sure. Okay. Approval of updated FY 26 select board town manager work plan, so this would be added. I don't know that we need to keep this format, I have to carry it over some column, that was just, you know, for the. I mean, do we wanna keep track of what was not done in the previously identified time frame or not?
I'd be happy to put it into a slightly different format. I like color coding.
I know.
I found that helpful, just at a glance to show kind of what's complete, what's in process, what's not really started yet. If it's okay with you, I could put it in that format and, I mean, in the meantime, we can post this on the website, right away once you guys vote it.
I just feel like this is simpler, it'd be easier to update, in
Yeah.
terms of keeping it current on the website. There were a
Mhm.
couple of comments at the CPC meeting about why the town work plan's not on the website, so.
The same as I think I told you from the historic commission, it's a valid
Yeah.
concern.
I said that, yeah.
So,
So I think the one that you're doing with the status is important internally, but it seems like a nightmare to try to keep that updated.
It is difficult
Yeah.
to keep because things change every day, yeah.
Yeah. So this, we would, so what do you think about the River Road? I would change the wording of it, but just say. Take that out till the next, beginning of FY 27.
mhm.
Okay, so keep,
How about the DER though?
well, that's not gonna take town staff, right?
Not much, and actually, I looked back at, that one was actually built into the baseline for last year. Because once we were accepted into that, so that was,
Oh, okay,
so that's,
all right, I did put the baseline. in.
yeah, that's not in, works on here, but when I searched through my overall one, the DER specifically was in that baseline project.
You've got the HR administration in too. No,
What do you mean?
then look on the high HR.
I don't, that's not
Does
an
it go to
option.
work plan?
I don't think it's an optional project. I mean, that's the
Okay.
baseline function, but
Okay.
that would go in the baseline list that's after this, so. Well, I don't know, you don't list individual positions when you're
When
hiring.
you're creating it, I didn't know if you would.
Yeah, I think all the work's been done, pretty much, Angus, right? The job description's done and then,
Yeah, I mean, we need to revise the, they have 3 job descriptions, figure out where they're gonna sit, some of the operational
right.
issues, I've given that some thought, but.
okay. All right, so do you wanna add that baseline plan, or if that's your call, the baseline list is your thing, right?
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so can we vote to approve this and then I think putting it on the town projects is the appropriate place?
Okay.
What do you think?
Fine.
We could also have it on the select board webpage as well.
yeah, and with the new site, it's actually gonna be a lot of the stuff's gonna be much more like front and center.
I just think if it's out there and easy to find, I mean,
Yeah.
at least it was a
Oh,
very
yeah,
good comment, she was
sure,
saying,
no, yeah.
only way to get work done is to get on the work plan, but we can't find the work plan, so it's like, yeah.
And it's
understood that.
embedded in multiple packets, but yeah, it's not like.
It needs to be a
If
standard.
we're making that the baseline of how you have to get something
I
accomplished,
totally agree.
we gotta make it like candy for them to find.
It will be very easy to find.
All right, did we vote on that, Amanda? All right, was there a motion?
No.
A motion to approve the work plan is
Yeah,
modified,
that's-
I'll make that motion.
All right,
Yeah, second. Under discussion, I did put together just a couple of things if I could.
in terms of status?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think I have a review and there should be 3 for that, so what I wanted to do is just kind of at a high level, put out, this first slide is just some of the continuing initiatives that I try to keep it really focused on the kind of higher level, bigger time impact things. But just so you're aware, these are all kind of actively ongoing. This is not a comprehensive list, but like I said, I try to focus on kind of the bigger ones. I did the next slide is some of the baseline functions that at this present moment are higher intensity in terms of the time impact. Let's see, oh, I think there was a. Okay, yeah, and then, shoot, can I see? I feel like I'm mixing up page here. Yeah, you have it, but it didn't get stapled on mine. So the third slide is just like a kind of a throwaway, but I thought was interesting. This just from yesterday, I was going through my records, like just in the course of a day, and I will, if you'll humor me, I'll just read the list. These are all issues I worked on yesterday. So when people hear about the baseline, was solid waste procurement, library project procurement, green burials, we have a pending request for legal advice on green burials, and that's being pressed. Pentucket budget, major Boyd Street acceptance, retiree health insurance and the actuarial study, cellular infrastructure, public safety roof project, and the changes there that I sent you guys to know. Paid school capital planning. We're actively working with Jonathan and with Guiana to get all the conditions assessment projects fully integrated in the capital program. The IBEW, the new water union, paid school asbestos testing. This is something that arose from the paid school telecom project that I just learned yesterday. We've got to do some asbestos testing. The paid school NSBA process, the Little Artichoke Dam project, the Upper Artichoke alum treatment. I was corresponding with the city's consultant, asked us for contact information for a number of property owners who they want to correspond with. Page pipe state change order, that's to do with this, change to the curb, which you mentioned. Employee retirement transition, we did get a notice of retirement from a very prominent employee in the last, recently, so that's, I'm working with that person on transition planning. It's not gonna be for 4 months, but it's a lot. Looking at employee wage comps, the ADA requirements that webinar I did with these new requirements, Middle Street Bridge change orders, and it's intentionally plural, it's not singular, there's 3. Website conversion and Mill Pond dog signage and flyer, and I had 4 scheduled meetings yesterday, so this is just this is like, I could do one of these every single workday. And so it's just, I just wanted to, for people who might roll their eyes, like, this is one day, this is just what we do every single day. So, and then the final one, and this is really the thing I wanted to focus on with tonight's comments, is as I look ahead, some of the things that will need increased time going forward to fully effectuate the website conversion, even once we go live, like, that's gonna be a continuing thing to backfill some of the prior years. The personnel policy amendments, we have a number of them, a draft form to get those over the finish line with legal review and public hearing and vote is gonna take many, many hours. Jenny and I are actively working on this multi-year budget forecasting. That is an enormous lift, and Jenny she's kind of stressed about, can we pull it off? We try every year. We are actively working on it. Newburyport Water IMA, this is a generational opportunity. You guys are deeply involved with that. The Indian Hill Pipeline, the Whittier Regional Agreement, the cybersecurity plan. I'm meeting with Christian and Dave next week. Christian's got a draft plan. Before we do that, it's a big deal. Regional services, there's some specifics there, as you know, that we're kicking around. The fire department organizational study, the BCC handbook, working with Brian and Caitlin on a facilities master plan for operations and maintenance tasks, the Verizon cable license renewal, exploring health insurance options. I know when I get to budgeting, I'll be asked the same question I'm asked every year. To really do that, looking at GIC or looking at plan design changes is a huge undertaking. The investment services procurement remains just kicked forward week after week. We don't have time for it, even though it's required and we should have done it a while ago. I am looking to revitalize 2 more of these interdepartment working groups because the land use one is so productive and so helpful. These next 2, I really wanted to point out. There's been talk, for instance, last year with the IMA on animal control. Is there a better way? Is there a better partner? If that's something you want me, and I know you want me looking at, but if you want, like, me and Dwyer got to start having meetings and real meetings, not just like chatting with our counterparts, but like real, like how would it work? What would the level of service be? What would the financial terms? That's a major, if you want that as potential alternative to renewing the agreement with Newbury for FY 27. That's gonna be a huge impact or a huge effort, and same with Harbor Master, same exact situation with Harbor Master. Dwyer can have conversations about, oh, this, maybe this, that's a long way from having a deal. And then, you know, finally the Turkey Hill Land donation, like that's still hanging out there.
Yeah.
You know, we've known all along, it's gonna be bandwidth issues. So these are the things that as I look at the list and I look at where we're trying to get, these are all issues that if we're gonna get these done or substantially advanced in the next 6 months, they're gonna require a lot more time than we've had for them in the last several months, so.
On these IMAs, is there an opportunity to do another 1-year extension? Just to give
Absolutely.
us some, I think, what do you guys think? I mean, we're not taking a vote, but I feel
Yeah.
like that, just to give us some breathing room, you know?
Nothing hurts you by doing that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was kind of my, like, getting into budget season,
Yeah.
I wanted to just be upfront that, like, I mean, I can do all this stuff, I just can't do it all at once.
We got bigger fish to fry, but I mean.
Well, there are.
Angus
yeah,
and I
bigger
met
fish.
earlier today with water and the opportunity to deal with water in Newburyport. Again, as he said, it's a once in a generational thing. That's a big focus. So
Yeah.
And that's one of.
that versus what we pay to pick up dogs, I could care less.
Angus, could the HR manager help or take over the health insurance stuff?
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah, Ross, I was looking at this list in a prior one, how many things an HR manager could.
Yeah,
do.
there's a lot, yeah, definitely. Yeah, because what we really ought to have is like an insurance advisory committee that would be comprised of current employees, union employees and non-union employees and retirees. And that's what some of the bigger towns, you know, have. In Westford, they have that. And the HR office manager, I was part of it as an employee, that's something right now, you know, me and Caitlin and Jenny will meet 3 or 4 times a year about insurance and plan design. And we meet with our insurance rep from Maya, and, you know, we have substantive conversations on this several times a year. But that's a long way from actually changing either going to like the GIC or changing the plan design, where you know you're affecting dozens of employees' situation, which, needless to say, triggers, you know, many dozens of hours of just to do it properly, just so people know what's being looked at, what the pros and cons are. So that's absolutely something an HR person would be taking the lead on.
All right, anything else on that?
No,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I remember. I thought I was gonna forget.
No, I didn't. No. Thanks.
All right, next item is minutes. Any comments on the minutes?
We approve them, so. That's okay.
All right, you trust me?
Sure they were better.
No. All right.
Ross, have any?
No, I'm ready.
Got any more comments? No. Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 18th as submitted.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I mean, can Ross vote on minutes if he wasn't here?
Yeah.
He can, if he wants
Thought they
to.
were a great job anyway, so, yeah.
All right, Ross, A+ for Ross.
Hopefully no one comes after them.
Now you can vote on it.
Yeah,
It's just a procedural.
all right, next item, discussion, potential select board sponsored CPA funded articles. Angus just put this in here. I mean, are there any that we wanna bring forward? Today's not the last day we can do that, but maybe the discussion at the next meeting would be.
yeah, there's nothing on my radar, but yeah, as Wendy said, and we talked about it a little at CPA last night. Anytime the deadline's coming up, I want to proactively say, hey, the window's gonna close. Just so if it closes, you're not like, oh, shoot, why didn't we do such and such?
Yeah.
So there's nothing on my radar, but if there was an intent to go after CPA funding for anything this cycle, I would need to have that direction pretty soon, so we could.
I would think you should already have it by now. People were.
I think so, yeah.
One point that was made at the CPC meeting is if the select board is gonna bring an article, they should communicate with the committees that might also have an interest. So just passing it along. All right. Doesn't mean we can't bring something forward next week, but for now, we don't have anything on the radar, right?
I don't.
All right, good. Page School MSBA timeline and funding requirements from the town. So the schedule's in here.
Yep. Yeah, I have I'm going to this informational webinar with MSBA on the 27th, and Pentucket and Gianap will also be part of
Oh,
that.
okay, good.
So this email thread lays out the details of the April 17th deadline. There's a couple of things going on right now. I had my monthly finance team meeting with Pentucket on Tuesday, and this was a major focus of that meeting. So they're all on board in terms of they're fully engaged. Pentucket is in terms of preparing the SOI. I'm trying to put together a meeting right now with Jonathan and Gianap and town staff, just so we're very clear on division of labor and who's preparing the SOI, who's doing what, and what support is going to be needed from town staff and from Gianap, so that we can get our schedules aligned, because that April 17th is going to come lightning quick.
Right.
And there's a vote that needs to be taken by the school committee, so we need to make sure we know what the date is and that we work backwards and we have everything prepared by that time. One thing I put on in the wording for tonight was funding requirements from the town and district. I did talk to Jonathan and Justin on Tuesday and verified that if the SOI goes in this April, if the district is accepted into the pipeline for MSBA, that would be known around December of 2026. And that would start that 270-day eligibility period, which Whittier is currently in the middle of. Only after that would the district be engaging a OPM and then initiating a feasibility study. The point being, it would be fiscal 28 before the district would be incurring any costs to engage the OPM or to conduct the feasibility study. So I wanted to make sure we were clear on that, so that we weren't overlooking anything that ought to be budgeted for FY27. Nothing's good for FY27. So the one thing we did talk about Tuesday was, obviously the driver on this is Page School, but the statement of interest will be filed by Pentucket School District, not by the town of West Newbury. And we have every expectation that MSBA is going to press the district to look at elementary education district-wide, not just in West Newbury. The administration, Pentucket administration, agrees we should be looking at that, and I think my counterparts in Groveland and Merrimack agree we should be looking at that. So that is going to determine the scope of the feasibility study, because obviously a feasibility study looking at Page solely would be quite different in scope and cost than something that looks more broadly at elementary education. That raises the prospect of, if the scope of the feasibility study ends up being more district-wide, the cost of that would be apportioned and corresponding to that, as opposed to if it was just Page, Pentucket would be adding to our assessment for FY28, not to the other two towns. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we'll continue to. This is one of the short list items that's getting a lot of attention.
All right. Next item is potential vendor for cellular infrastructure.
Yes and no. When I suggested it previously when I built the water tank,
Oh, you did?
with Helen Jeff Peters.
Oh, this is very interesting.
Well, I was on this planning board. We wrote the first one in the state that it was by law. So we engaged David Maxim, who Angus happens to know, mentioned this earlier. He was the premier guru at the time on the cell tower bylaws and locating and everything else. So yeah, people put them on water tanks because they're at the highest points in town. So it's a no-brainer.
Right.
And the town can control the dynamic versus the cell company. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. So what would be the order of operations here to pursue
Well, so I reached out to KP because I know, they've got tons of experience with doing RFPs and, the things would need to be, crafted very carefully in terms of, costs and site access and, maintenance. I did meet with Mark Marlowe. He thought it was a fantastic idea. He was all about it. And at the meeting Chris and I had earlier today with Mark and with Jack Haley, they're very supportive. Mark had talked to Bob. I think Bob thinks it's a great idea. So none of that's formalized, but so far it seems like it doesn't seem like people have any real heartburn. And I think the point, and I made this in my memo, is if the vendors are looking, they're gonna find a place. So the town can be proactive and try to capture that revenue and have something that is a negligible, if any, visual impact because the tank's already there, as opposed to if they find, private party, and all of a sudden there's a cell tower proposed, that's gonna be like not what people want.
We have a bylaw, I believe, it states it's gotta go to the town, the first
Correct.
opportunity.
Correct, yep. So anyhow, so the next step is, I reached out to KP to say, because I think the idea would be if the policy direction is set, the more we can get other parties, whether it's KP or David Maxon, to do, to help prepare the RFP and manage that process would be a big help. I'm assuming very strongly that there would be a town meeting vote needed to authorize the Water Commission to enter a multi-year lease. I'm not 100% certain about that, but I'm pretty sure it would be a town meeting vote. So I think the path would be to do.
I'm just thinking, if we're gonna do an RFP, and I know the water tower is great, a number of years ago, they considered it pipe stave on the DPW.
Right.
Can we do both at the same time? Get
You
options?
could, I mean, I think politically that one's probably gonna be, but
Why not? What's,
I don't know, would that be?
we didn't get any proposals because again, it was a town controlling the dynamics. The cell tower providers, they wanna put up the tower and then sublet to
Right,
secondary providers. That's how they monetize it.
right.
So they didn't want to engage at the time. If we got dead spots and they're looking,
Are there dead spots in?
I don't know, but somebody said that's typically when they look to put up the towers.
Okay,
I'm just
That
thinking,
street is where the dead spot is. There's reception every day I come home.
well, every time I drive by your driveway, my phone always cuts
if
out.
I have a block going, so nobody can bug my house. No, but I'm just thinking, if you're gonna do the RFP, you have the opportunity for both sides.
What's that?
Where it's bad, so.
I mean, a good location for some.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, it's really bad, like by Rick Thurlow's house, cause you're down in that
Oh,
little
yeah.
hollow,
Yeah.
and it's just hills all around you, but.
Mm.
No, I'm just glad to hear you're thinking about water towers and not about freestanding towers.
Yeah.
You don't like those trees that look like fake pine trees?
No, that's Rick Parker who likes those.
You said it, not me.
I think this sounds great.
Yeah, so we'll see what the path is procedurally. If there's a town meeting vote, obviously we need to get a warrant article out there and. But I will circle back with the person who contacted us.
Good.
To let them know that we are, obviously it would be procurement. They have no inside track.
Mhm.
They would have to respond to a bid just like anyone else.
Yeah.
But just to let them know that we are looking into what the steps would be to make the water tank, available.
And realistic for this town meeting, or are you thinking?
I think so. I think if we don't move quickly, I think the window closes.
Okay.
But potentially, if they find a private landowner, if no one has land or no one sells to them, then if the opportunity could remain, but
Mhm. Okay, great. So review of FY 25 annual report, I'm not ready to do that.
Good, because I didn't see it in the packet.
Yeah. I mean. So, I mean. The interesting thing about these annual reports is it's FY 25, so to try to remember what was significant, is pretty challenging, so I'm not gonna even ask you, Chris Ross, obviously you were not on the board then. So I'll just work on drafting it for the next meeting. I mean, I looked at the year prior, and it was just a list, like a bullet list of dates and. I like that better than a narrative that.
I can't remember last week's, so if I have to go back a year, which for.
All right, so I'll keep. Correspondence letter from Lieutenant Governor Driscoll about community compact. Do you want to describe what that was for?
yeah, we had gotten a grant a couple of years ago. We spoke about practices grant. That was what subsidized the ClearGov platform,
Mhm.
which we're continuing to use for the capital program. As you know, we did make a go at that with the operational budgeting and personnel budgeting. Invested a huge amount of time, Jenny in particular, invested a huge amount of time the last budget cycle. That did not end up, as Rebecca says, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. It's something that really would have needed someone like to maintain year round, and we just don't have the finance staffing to do that. So we did end up canceling our ClearGov subscription for the current fiscal year for operational and personnel budgeting. But we have continued to invest in it for capital with great effect. It's a very, very powerful platform, and we're very happy with it. So that all started with this grant, and so part of the grant, there was a required closeout report submitted back in October that I think I sent to the board back at the time. And you know, I could have done just a check the box type, but I wrote like a, you know, I think 3-page memo or maybe even 4-page memo to give the state some feedback on the experience we had with ClearGov. It's a very powerful platform. It does everything they say it does. It wasn't really well calibrated to a small town like ours, so I thought they would benefit from that feedback, because I do think it's a very worthwhile platform, and for a community that has like a finance director, a full-time budget director, like Westford had, it would be great, but for our town, it just ended up being a bridge too far.
Yeah.
We did get it fully built out and kick the tires, and so I say that with a very informed perspective. It wasn't like we just didn't do it, like we did it, and we just didn't get the return on investment of time, except for the capital. And I think when the capital program is presented more broadly in a couple of weeks, I think people will be very, very impressed with the platform and the level of transparency.
Good. When I was doing the research on the organizational assessment, that program offers a governance assessment, like best practices, so, but, I mean, I think we don't have time to wait for a grant for that, so.
Yeah.
All right, some future agenda items, we have a resident request to consider banning the SGAR pesticides from town buildings and throughout town, so, that will be on the February 5th agenda. Just giving you a heads up on that. You wanna talk about this one, Angus? There's been so long, this correspondence about the hunting and parking.
Yeah, we had resident correspondence, basically with concerns that there were a couple of trucks parked at the end of way to the river on the western edge, and the question was whether that was sanctioned parking, and they were saying they felt there should be signage as to is it parking or is it not parking, as well as
On the western end?
at the western end of way to the river. So before, after the paved end, it goes to the dirt road.
There is a little, on the western side, there is that little 2-car parking right there that faces towards the river. You come in.
I'm not saying at the bottom of Coffin taking a right, I'm saying at the bottom of way to the river, take a left where it curls around to the left there. To what you.
Yeah, you come down, take the left, and you go down that little hill.
Yeah.
That's the eastern side.
That's the western side of way to the
The
river.
western side of way to the river, it's the eastern side of the gap, but yeah.
Okay.
Right, so after it's paved but you can continue driving off-road.
Yeah,
you know,
there is no authorized paid parking there, but when we took the grant, we put $10,000 to do parking and had an obligation to do it. Somehow it never got done.
That's exactly.
That's the issue.
That's the issue, because Rebecca had those files and she pulled all that and she found those. Actually, we'd love to talk to you about that, because we have the files, but we don't have the institutional memory. But she said.
That was a part of the commitment to get the grant.
It
was.
was.
It was right down at the end.
It was, and it's shown on the open space map
I was gonna.
as a parking area.
It's what we discussed in the Brick Hill. I mean, I see one on Coffin Street, there's no parking on Coffin Street.
Right,
Ben,
yeah, so
we
it
just-
brings up this issue of discrepancies between some of the maps that the town has on its website and whether those are actually true. And then the other comment, or I would say critique, that came from this resident is while they were out hiking, they heard, gunshots. And so we explained that there's this whole issue
Waterways.
exactly, in the riverfront, that's not the town's
The
authority.
duck hunters can float in or can wade in.
Correct.
I've seen them too.
So that's something that's really not the town jurisdiction, but the point that was made by the resident was there ought to be clear signage so that people know what's allowed, what's not allowed. So if they are out there hiking and they hear gunshots, they know that either is or isn't appropriate. And I thought that was a fair point. So it's something that we'll put the discussion into your future packet, and you can kind of chew on that, but it's a set of.
Towards that point, I've actually seen other people in Riverbend, not in the water, with firearms.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I just kind of put my eyes down, keep moving. They're not supposed to be there legally.
not supposed to be there hunting or not supposed to be carrying
I
firearms?
presume when they have a rifle, they're hunting in Riverbend.
Oh, right, okay,
I'm gonna say, I just keep moving.
yeah.
Yes, I know people do hunt in there illegally.
Hmm.
So, but there are.
So, yeah, so I think the correspondence had some, I think, very valid suggestions on improvements on signage and communication.
So is this a select board issue or?
It's probably really a Concom issue because it's the lands under their care and
I would
custody.
favor that. I mean, do you want to get involved?
Again, Concom will push the issue forward when we bought the property, so yeah, it should be there. I mean, if we have to get involved, fine, but, it seems more reasonable for Concom.
Yeah. But I think our concern would be the mapping, it's just. But I don't think that we need to.
Pretty funny, the department's on the map and it was supposed to be there.
Mhm.
Can I add 2 items to the future agenda items?
Yeah, so I didn't ask any comments on the ban of pesticides. This is kind of a statewide effort.
Is that Roundup they're talking about? What, I don't know.
The single generation, I can't remember the acronym.
Oh, I think we'll have discussion at the time, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know nothing yet.
So some towns are banning it, on town. Newbury, you can't use it on a town building, but that you can also have a home rule petition to ban it throughout town, so even, residents couldn't use it, so.
I need more information.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, be a good
Okay.
agenda item.
But Catherine's got her hand up this one.
Hey, Catherine, did you have a comment on something?
Yes, I just wanted to give a little input on the Riverbend discussion, because of course I live right on it.
Yes, we're just identifying items for future agenda.
I know. I understand that completely. I just thought that I might have a little insight for you guys. I don't know if you care at this point.
All right, 2 minutes or less.
It'll be 2 minutes or less.
Okay.
On the way to the river end, you're correct, there's parking down there, and there's also a place to launch a boat, like a kayak or a rowboat. There's a little inlet there for people to walk their watercraft down there. People do park on Coffin Street, and it's really, it's a hazard because they're treating the corner of Coffin Street and River Road like a parking lot, and that is a road. So I will often come around the corner and literally encounter cars parked in the middle of the road. So something to discuss.
Yeah.
Regarding hunters in Riverbend, the answer is yes, yes, yes. It's downright scary. We understand the waterways issue, which is out of our control. But like Chris says, I will often encounter hunters out there carrying rifles. I have had one shot within 50 feet of me, and it's petrifying. So I do think it's something that needs to be discussed, and that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thanks. So that is a select board issue.
And just to Catherine's point too, 2 years ago, I think Angus gave me about
Oh, I remember that. The signs.
14 signs to post.
Yeah.
Some were Riverbend.
Yeah.
Those were the first ones that got ripped off. The sign didn't get ripped off, the signboard got smashed, so that was most of the other signs are still up on the other properties, so Riverbend is definitely an issue. Other thing, I was, when hunting season was still going on, mid-December, I was walking up on Break Hill. And probably within 100 yards from me, there was 3 shots in a row. And I've actually called the police to report somebody hunting there too. So just
You didn't
enough.
put no hunting signs at the kill, right, in your spree? I don't think you put. them.
No.
Yeah.
But that doesn't give anybody the right still.
No, but I just think,
Every hunter who hunts a house, know you need written permission to handle it, so.
all right, so do we wanna have this as an agenda item, or do we just wanna pass it to Concom and then?
I would push it to Concom if they can't deal with that back. I think
Okay.
that's more appropriate.
All right, good. Was that the second item or?
No, I haven't hit my 2 yet.
Oh, all right, go.
One, and I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Anytime the town acquires open space or protections on open space, we need to have an exemption for exploration of water and wells on those acquisitions, and I think it's a bigger discussion, because we can't drill on certain property because we have, so we're acquiring all this property and we're kind of screwing ourselves, so.
Well, that's one benefit of the policy, if we're involved in the discussion right from the beginning.
But again, it should be documented in a policy somewhere, so everybody's aware of that. Secondly, Angus and I, we did discuss it earlier today, I mentioned it before here. I think we need on water to disconnect the component from the intermunicipal agreement about West Newbury having the ability to drill in Newburyport's watershed,
Yeah, that's in executive session stuff.
okay? Just making sure it, I'm sure if it's public session.
No, but it's on the agenda for tonight, so. So good. And you wanna add Ross? No. All right, good. All right, I move to recess to, no, not recess. Yes, recess to executive session, MGL chapter 30, section 21A2, 6, and 7.
Second.
All in favor? What?
I just got a note, and we don't have many people on, but just with, tonight's meeting having been postponed from last week, because I had the flu. That means next week is, a week from tonight is the next board meeting, so I
Okay.
just want to say that.
And was there an announcement about the cable for this meeting, or?
Oh, yeah, this meeting tonight did not go out live. There was an issue with the cable, equipment. So it did go out through, Zoom. And it will be broadcast on local cable, but because of an issue with the equipment that arose last night.
Okay.
Tonight's meeting was not broadcast live. Adam is, looking into what the fix is. He's actually already identified what the fix is, and he's gonna go ahead and get that fixed, and so.
Okay.
For at least the immediate time, we don't have the capacity to, or the capability to, put out live recordings from, this room.
All right, all in favor? Reed, aye.
I don't have.
Okay.
All right, the board will resume an open session after executive session for the sole purpose of adjournment. Thank you.